You got a nice crowd tonight. Isn't that nice? Do boo do boo do boo do. Okay, one guy up there. I'm over here. Shouldn't I be? Oh, there I am in the middle, looking up. Next week, Monday night. What are we?
Not right now.
Okay, later. Yep, 7.
Your grandson? You think my grandson? And then- I'm all- I'm your grandmother. Wow. Okay. You also- I'm your grandmother. Yeah.
A lot of people here.
You ready?
Where?
Take that.
Robert, Robert.
Yeah. Well, they haven't-
Acknowledgement of our city board meeting minutes or community redevelopment agency meeting minutes of April 11th. Our Affordable Housing Advisory Committee for May 1st. Education Advisory Board meeting of May 3rd. Our non-uniform employees retirement committee of May 8th. Our code compliance meeting minutes of July 10th. Hillsborough Inlet District meeting minutes of July 13th and Community Appearance Board meeting minutes of July 26th, all of 2023.
Motion to approve.
Second.
Motion by Vice Mayor, second by Commissioner Preston. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Okay, approval of our agenda for September 5th, 2023.
Motion to approve.
Second.
We have a motion by the Vice Mayor, second by Commissioner Preston. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? All right, Madam Clerk.
For those attending via Zoom online wishing to speak under public comment or on an item that's open for public input, please click raise hand at the bottom under the reactions tab and your audio will be unmuted when you're recognized by Mayor Gantz. For those attending via Zoom by telephone, please press *9 to raise your hand and your audio will be unmuted when you are recognized by Mayor Gantz. Please make sure your audio is unmuted on your end by pressing *6. Thank you.
Thank you very much. The month of September is nationally recognized as Suicide Prevention Month. More than 45,000 Americans die by suicide each year, and in Florida, a person dies by suicide every 2 hours on average. That's far outnumbering homicides in the state of Florida. Firearms are the leading and most lethal method of suicide in Florida, and access to guns triple the risk of death. Suicide is a national epidemic costing the lives of 6,000 veterans each year and is a leading cause of death for first responders. It is critical to recognize the signs of depression that may lead to thoughts of suicide and must recognize the best methods to prevent suicide when a person is in crisis, such as asking a person if they are thinking of taking their life, keep them safe, remove their access to lethal means, and get them professional help. In Florida, if you dial 988 or call the National Suicide Prevention Lifeline at 1-800-273-8255 or text 741-741, National Suicide Prevention Lifelines are available. The City of Deerfield Beach enthusiastically supports the mission of Lock It Up and the League of Women Voters of Broward County's Gun Safety Committee, as well as the Florida chapter of the American Academy of Pediatrics, by encouraging safe storage of firearms and removal of other lethal means to prevent suicide. Now, therefore, I, Bill Gantz, Mayor of the City of Deerfield Beach, do hereby proclaim September 23rd as Suicide Prevention Month. Ms. Philpott.
Good evening, everyone. I'm here on behalf of the League of Women Voters. On behalf of the League of Women Voters of Broward and the Florida chapter of the American Academy of Pediatrics, I'd like to thank the Commission for recognizing Suicide Prevention Awareness Month. Over 45,000 Americans die by suicide each year, half of them by firearm. Locking up guns saves lives. The new phone number to call for a mental health crisis is 988. Anyone who would like a free gun lock mailed to their home can email gloria.lewis, that's gloria.lewis @va.gov. I also brought some gun locks. This is what they look like. And then bumper stickers, which read, "It's easier to child-proof your gun than bulletproof your child." So thank you very much for the proclamation. You have a question?
Yes, I do. May I?
Sure.
Thank you. So again, these are the gun locks.
Yes.
Is there a way that they can get them this weekend?
I don't know. We're going to be at the community fair
Right,
on next Saturday.
Saturday at Zion.
And we'll have locks there. The League of Women
Wonderful.
Voters
So
will be there with
People
locks.
want to go to the community fair at Zion, they may be also.
Correct.
to
We'll
pick
have
up-
those there.
Well, thank
Yes.
you.
Okay. All right. Thanks, everybody.
Commissioner, appreciate it. So we get to honor some rock stars here in the city of Deerfield Beach. The Ocean Rescue Department represented the city of Deerfield Beach at the United States Lifeguard Southeast Regional Championships this year in Delray Beach, Florida, and the United States National Championships in Virginia Beach, Virginia. The Ocean Rescue Team won a total of 26 events and the team title at the Southeast Regional event. Dylan Arkowicz was the Open Men's High Point winner, and Dan Linehan was the overall High Point winner for the men. The Ocean Rescue Team then went on to win the Small Team National Championship again for the second straight year. We are extremely proud of our elite lifeguards gaining regional and national recognition, and our Ocean Rescue Department continuing to keep our beach and our community safe. Will all of you from Ocean Rescue please stand and join us up here in the front?
Mike. Good job. Man. Good job. You did a good job.
I'll be short and sweet. All these individuals in front of you, these ocean rescue professionals, they dedicated themselves. They were there at sunrise training before work. They were there until the sun set after work. They gave their whole lives to represent our city. And I can't express to you how much honor they have to represent our city. And when we're out there and they're out there at the nationals, and people were like, Deerfield Beach, where's Deerfield Beach? And now everybody, they want to trade them for their uniforms. I got Chiefs calling me now. They want one of our competition hats. And it's a great thing because they're establishing themselves, they're representing our profession, and they're training hard at what they do to represent our city. And without your support, without the support of the senior management, none of this will be possible. So we greatly and sincerely thank you.
Thank you. Chief Mike Brown was humble not to introduce himself, but we want to thank you, Chief, for all the hard work, and all of you, ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much for your hard work and making us proud in Deerfield Beach. Thank you.
You have one more comment. Mr. City Manager, I have asked for a brag board for this group for a number of years, and I'd like to know the status. If you could please update us, it'd be greatly appreciated.
Yes, Commissioner. Currently, we're working with the vendor on the design and materials to be used for that, and also where to place it as well. So we're working on that as we speak.
Okay. I apologize. I did skip item number 2 and jump right to item number 3. But I'm going to bring up Department of Environmental Services to do the honors.
Good evening, Mayor, Commissioners. Tonight, I'm here with Kevin Carter. He's the chair for the state of Florida for our Florida WARN program. I'll let him introduce the program and tell you a little bit about what he's here for tonight. Thank you.
Great. Thank you, Priscilla. Thank you, Mayor Gantz, Vice Mayor Parnas, Commissioner Drosky, Commissioner Preston, and Commissioner Hudak for allowing the Florida Water and Wastewater Agency Response Network to celebrate your city's utility for the response to Hurricane Ian. Florida WARN began back in 2005 after 4 hurricanes ravaged the state in 2004. We are utilities helping utilities, friends helping friends. And in fact, as I sit here, or stand here, I should say, we have people up in the Big Bend area coming off their work shift, restoring water and wastewater to those communities that were just impacted by Hurricane Idalia. So we're here to celebrate one hurricane response while we're having another one. One of the reasons we like to come to this type of event is to make sure people are aware and are ready for hurricanes, even if we haven't seen one for a while. We were right at the peak of the season. And so please have your communities be ready, have a plan to implement. And the one thing I do know is that your utility has their plan and they're ready to go. And they are also ready to go should we need them to respond again. During Hurricane Ian, we placed a couple generators over in the city of Cape Coral. Generators are our lifeblood after an event. Just like in your house, when you lose your power, things change. Our systems take power. And so we needed those generators. And by sending them over there, we were able to get some of the work done. So we didn't even have to have their crews come and join us, and they were ready at the gate to go. So with that, without further ado, I want to present the certificate of appreciation to the city of Deerfield Beach for your great response to Hurricane Ian. Priscilla?
Thank you so much. Much appreciated.
Thank you.
Priscilla, would you like to say a few words?
No, I just want to thank Kevin and Florida Warren for the support that they've given us in the past. As it is, as he stated, it is utilities helping utilities, and we have availed ourselves of some needs in the past using some equipment through the system that's been made available to us as partners. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you. I appreciate it.
Okay, we are now at the budget and millage public hearings for first reading. Items 4 and 5, it's my understanding, are going to be presented together, but we will need separate votes on both of those ordinances, which are up for first reading. So I'll go ahead and read both of those titles into the record, followed by a brief statement in accordance with Florida law. Item number 4 is an ordinance of the City Commission of the City of Deerfield Beach, Florida, adopting the millage rate to be levied by the city for the fiscal year beginning October 1, 2023, and ending September 30th, 2024. Stating the percentage change by which the millage rate exceeds the rollback rate as computed pursuant to section 200.065 Florida statutes, providing for conflicts, severability, and an effective date. Again, this is first reading. Item number 5 is an ordinance of the City Commission of the City of Deerfield Beach, Florida, adopting the final budget for the fiscal year beginning October 1, 2023, and ending September 30th, 2024, providing for conflicts, severability, and an effective date. This is first reading. Turning back to the millage item, just note that on second reading, the proposed millage that's before you today will require a 4/5 vote of the City Commission. The proposed operating millage is being proposed at 6.0018 mils, which is 10.63% more than the rollback rate of 5.4253 mils, calculated pursuant to Florida law. The voted debt millage service is 0.2520 for a total proposed millage rate of 6.2538. Now I'll turn it over to the city manager to make a presentation.
Good evening, Mayor, City Commission, members of the public. David Santucci, City Manager. The presentation that I have for you tonight is very similar to the one that was presented on during the budget workshop. However, I did make some additional slides to break down some of the information that we did show. Because all this information has already been previously presented, I'll concentrate more on a few slides, but move quickly through others that I think we did a good job last time of explaining with the commission. But I do have the entire presentation to present. Want to make sure that members of the public who did not get the opportunity to hear that presentation and are here tonight do get that opportunity. So Heather, you'll just have to keep up with me on the next slides that I say here. Obviously, this is the budget calendar. It's September 5th. This is the first reading. The city attorney discussed with you what the purpose of tonight is, as well as what will occur on the 13th of September. On the next slide, we presented this last time, but this represents the residential property values and the increase that we have seen, and also in comparison, excuse me, I went right over that slide too. These are our strategic priorities and the basis of our budget. This is how we develop our budget. We are keeping these things in mind, myself and my directors, when we prepare this budget and present it to you. It contains the priorities that not only the City Commission has put forth for us, but also from feedback of the residents of what they would like to see in the city. And we do that to make sure that we are improving within the areas of customer care. We are being sustainable and eco-friendly. We are modernizing our infrastructure and our processes, and we are being fiscally accountable and transparent, all to make sure that we are enhancing the citizens' quality of life. On this slide, again, as I said, these are the assessed values comparison from last year to this year. We've seen an 11% increase, slightly outpacing the county percent average of 10. We did tick up a little bit to the 11th lowest assessed valued city, where we used to be the 10th lowest. So we did make a slight improvement there. Next slide, please. This slide right here, I presented it, and it's got great information, but I know it's a little bit difficult to digest, so I'll just explain it briefly because I have more details. The bar graphs represent the number of parcels for each one of these cities, the light blue being homes, the dark blue being the condos. The line graph represents the taxable value of the average home in the average condo. Average home being the gray bar graph, the yellow being the condo, the line graph. If you notice, we compare pretty closely to Tamarack and Sunrise in terms of the number of parcels and the value of those different parcels. But if you'll go to the next slide, please, Heather. This breaks it down pretty uniquely and something that we haven't looked at before. And so here, what you can see, and just concentrate on the dark blue and the light blue in each bar, the dark blue representing single family home values and the light blue representing condo values. And I have some more comparative slides for other cities to show you, but I want you just to notice that on the left-hand side, the key shows values less than 50,000 going all the way up to 1 million. So in each one of those categories, as you can see, we have most of our condos very low in value from a property assessment perspective, and our residential property single family home assessments are somewhere between the 500,000 to the 200,000, 175,000 range. Is the majority of those properties. I'm going to show you some slides in a little bit, and I'll tell you the percentage of properties that we have at various levels of assessed value, but we're not there yet. I do just want to point out that only 54% of our homes in here in Deerfield Beach are homesteaded. So let's go to the next slide, please. Here, right here, this is Sunrise, dark blue being single family homes, gray being condominiums. You can see the values there at the lower range, right? Not much at the top, more of it at the bottom and in the middle of that range. Next slide. Tamarack, again, pretty much the same thing, lower valued properties, mixture of single family homes, mixture of condos at the lower range, single family homes in the mid range. Next slide, please. Here's Pompano Beach. Pompano Beach ticks up quite a bit, as you can see, a lot less clustered at the bottom of the range of 100,000 and less. Most of their condos and single family homes being in that mid range of about, 500,000 to maybe 150,000 in terms of the values of various condos and single family homes. So as we know, they have higher property values, they have more parcels, and here's a depiction of that, of why they're able to do some things a little bit differently than us. Next, let's look at Coral Springs. Coral Springs, very, very little at the bottom range, just a few condos. Particularly their home values are much greater. They have much more of a cluster in that mid-range. And you'll notice that, for instance, they have about 7,000 parcels in the $400,000 range for assessed value, 300 to 400,000 assessed value. And not each one of these is different. So I don't need you to go back, Heather, but like when we looked at Pompano Beach, they topped out at about 6,000. So, each graph is based on how many parcels each one of them has. So Coral Springs seeing a lot more in that mid-range for their single family homes. Also, let's take a look at Boca Raton. I mean, here you can clearly see why Boca is able to do some of the things that they're able to do. Their second highest category of homes is 1 million or more. So, Boca Raton has very, very little at the below $100,000 range of assessed value, much more clustered in the higher range. And again, multi-million-dollar homes over there. So hopefully that explained the first slide a little bit better.
Can you
Um,
actually, David, do you mind going back to slide number 6?
Sure.
Comparing it to slide number 11, because we hear people try to say, well, how come Boca has a lower millage rate than us? And I think it's visually pretty clear why.
Mhm.
Can we go to the next?
6 to 11.
Mhm. Pretty simple. Thank you.
Here is this slide is a little bit altered from the last time you saw it as well. And I thought it was important, one, to explain where your property taxes go. Because the city of Deerfield Beach only equates of about a third of the property taxes that you pay. The rest of it is going to either the North Broward Hospital District at 7.2%, Broward County at 27.8%, South Florida Water Management District gets 1.1%, Broward County School Board gets 32.4%, and the Children's Services Council gets approximately 2.2%. In the table to the right, that is a breakdown of all of the millage rates of the taxing districts that are on your tax bill for the city of Deerfield Beach and the total millage rate that you pay. And what I have here across the top in this bar graph is a depiction of every municipality in the county. And so as you can see, where we line up in that teal box, we compare very closely in total millage rate to cities like Wilton Manors, Plantation, Dania Beach, Coral Springs, again, ourselves, Pompano Beach, Sunrise, Coconut Creek, and Oakland Park. We're very close in that total overall millage rate because every municipality taxes a little bit differently. Some even have special taxing districts that add additional taxes onto the tax bill above and beyond their millage rate, their regular millage rate, I should say. Next slide, please. Again, this is the proposed millage rate for FY24. Operating millage rate, as Mr. Soroka said, 6.0018 with a total millage rate of 6.2538 is the recommendation in the budget as proposed. Next slide, please. I want to point out that over the past 15 years, the millage rate has either been lowered or remained the same. And you can see that here in this graph, and I want to break it down a little bit more in the next slide for you. So how has that millage rate changed or been lowered throughout that time? It's kind of interesting when you look at it from this perspective. In FY, you can see the change in the operating millage rate from FY15 to FY20. It went up, it went down, it went down, it went up, and it went down. What's interesting is if you look at fiscal years 18 and 19, the millage rate didn't change. The overall millage rate of 6.5007, because the offset in the lower debt service allowed the city to bring in additional operating millage rate for costs that they were incurring. And that's a normal thing. That's lots of cities do that. But I think it's just important to point out that from FY20 to FY24, and actually 19 as well, the millage rate has either reduced or stayed the same, lowering the millage rate every year over the past 4 years. The only year we weren't able to do that was during COVID, where it remained the same. So the millage rate has been reduced year over year recently at the rates that you see here. You go to the next slide. Thank you. Again, as we compare ourselves to others around us or like us, operating versus proposed millage rates. Many cities obviously keep around or about the same millage rate year over year. Some are able to decrease it for various reasons. Some increase it for various reasons. But this year you can see that cities like Tamarack are increasing their millage rate. In fact, there's 5 cities in the county who are increasing their operating millage rates this year. There are 2 cities in the county who are lowering them, one being Oakland Park, and I can't think of the other one offhand. But generally, most cities keep very consistent with their operating millage rates unless there's some major change. Next slide, please. Taxable value versus operating millage rate as a whole. Okay, we looked at single family home values, we look at condo values, but on the whole, how do we stack up and where are we? The operating millage rate is the gray bar graph that you see, and the blue line is the overall taxable value for that city. The value being on the right-hand side and the millage rate being on the left-hand side. So for Deerfield Beach, just slightly above 6, very similar to cities like Dania, Sunrise, Coral Springs. Our taxable values, you can see in that bar graph, are similar to places like Sunrise here. And actually, we're doing a little bit better than Tamarack. They have very low values, probably why they have a operating millage rate above and hovering around 7. But then there's cities like Coral Springs, who has more value than us, but they have an operating millage rate higher than ours. So it really kind of all depends on the city and how they operate, what their needs are, what the expectations are. Next slide, please. The city stands to collect estimated about 61.86 million in ad valorem tax revenue. That's one of the revenue sources that we have for the general fund. The CRA allotment is 2.64. That's what they get. CRA also gets tax dollars from the county and the North Broward Hospital District. So the net for the city is approximately 59.22 million. Each mill generates approximately 9.9 million. And we've seen approximately a 10.8% increase in taxable values of our property, or overall taxable value of 10.4 billion. So what does that equate to our ad valorem taxes that we anticipate to see this year? We're going to see about a 10.79% increase, which equates to $5.7 million increase in the ad valorem tax revenue for the city. Moving on to the fire assessment fees, we went ahead, we've done previously on 2 separate occasions, presented in workshops, the proposed fire assessment fees for the city this year. We are recommending an increase to the fire assessment fee. The original rate resolution that was passed by the city commission, I believe back in July, was for a maximum not to exceed of $324. Again, the city has the ability to go up as high as $372, as noted in the most recent fire assessment study. That would cover 100% of the portion of the fire-related services. As you can see here, also, many cities are increasing their fire assessment this year. It's probably an indication of the increase to the services that are service costs that everybody is experiencing, as well as it's likely in these larger increases that they've recently done a fire assessment fee study. I do want to point out what's interesting, as I mentioned earlier, some taxing districts have various structures within their overall millage rate. Pompano Beach just happens to be one of them. So aside from having a major increase in their fire assessment fee going now to recommended 331, they also have a separate special district that charges a $500,000 for fire services above their operating and debt service millage. So they receive various ways of budgeting, or getting revenues for the fire related services. Want to make sure that we spend time and discuss the amount of inflation that we have seen over the past 3 years. This inflation has been absorbed in the city without an increase to the millage over these past 3 years. Inflation is beginning to cool a bit, but still anything around that, currently what we're seeing is about is about 6%, but just last year we were at 9. We were at 9 for almost 2 years straight. So that's a very hefty inflationary rate for the cost of goods and services, which we provide to ultimately to the residents and the businesses at Deerfield Beach. And I want to show you on the next slide where those increases have been, the major ones at least. $2.3 million increase this year in law enforcement, $2 million for the fire rescue contract. A lot of that, about $1 million of that, in fact, was due to a change in the law. The Florida legislature enacted a employer increase to the FRS pension contributions for public safety personnel. So as you see, this is 4.3 million, about $1 million of that was due to that change in law, that, which again, the legislature did not fund for cities. They just increased it. So unfunded mandates that we typically hear about. To implement the paying class, as we did through 2 fiscal years, FY23 and FY24, this year it's a $1.6 million increase. The grayed out items here, these are not general fund. They're not that they didn't happen, but they're grayed out because they don't reflect the general fund hits. But we did see a $1 million pass through from the county that we weren't anticipating, as well as a 15% increase in the county wastewater rate. And we're anticipating a $1 million increase in our solid waste disposal costs this year as well. Property insurance has gone up by $900,000. Janitorial services and landscape services combined over $1 million. The contribution to the employee health insurance, our health insurance costs, those increased this year by over $500,000. We were hit with a mandatory FEC grade crossing. We do this annually. FEC goes out, they check the rail crossings. If they need to be fixed or repaired, we have the burden of the payment. This year, it's $332,000, which is a lot more than what we've seen in years previously. For our joint beach renourishment settlement agreement with the town of Hillsborough, this is a required monitoring activity that we must do with them. Dixie, to continue the Dixie highway fence, it's $210,000 and an $84,000 increase in our lobbyist services. That's a $9.3 million increase in the general fund alone. When we had the budget workshops, and as we present those numbers to you in June, these are department level requests. They're meant to get your feedback, what you'd like to see. Do you agree? Do you not agree? What else would you like to see? So on and so forth. And since that time, we have had to reduce the general fund by $10.9 million. And some of the expenses that we reduced are here before you. I'm not going to read every single one of them, but you can see some of the larger ones, a $10 million road and bridge project for FAU Research Boulevard. We pushed that out into FY25. Our director just had a good conversation with the county. They're okay with that as long as we continue to pursue that project. So I was happy to hear that. And also we reduced $855 million out of the Parks and Recs budget. And then again, we had that $1 million increase to public safety as FRS employer contributions. So these are the major changes that have occurred since then. So not only do we see, approximately $9.3 million increase due to increase in service costs, but we still reduced the budget by $10.9 million in order to balance it. These are not the most entertaining slides, so I'll just sit here for a second, just briefly. But this is the budget overview by fund, the changes within each fund, and then the overall grand total. Revenue sources, are we on the revenue? Yes, thank you. Revenue sources. These are the various revenue sources across all funds that would fund those expenditures. Again, we're looking at the property taxes, as I mentioned, a $5.7 million increase. Next slide, please. Here are the expenditures by category. So instead of looking at it from the perspective of each fund, this breaks it down by the various categories. So how much are we spending in personnel services, operating expenditures? Where are the increases? Where are the decreases? And that's what you can see here. Next slide, please. Our budget initiative. So what does this budget support? What programs, what projects, what service enhancements does it support? Continuation of the Braithwaite Center and the Bezos Academy, the Tigner Center, West Community Center completion, Constitution Park Community Center planning, lifeguard station completion, fishing pier restoration, implementation of the ERP, citywide median landscape and irrigation improvements. The fishing pier restoration items will be coming before you on September 13th. We've got cost estimates. We want to show you some conceptual ideas and get your feedback. So we'll actually be talking about that more on September 13th. And as well as the citywide median landscape and irrigation improvements, those bids have come in, and the cost of that is close to $1 million for all the medians that we have in the bid. And we'll be sharing that with you for hopefully for recommendation of approval on the 13th. We have several court resurfacings that we want to get accomplished for the various courts that our residents either play tennis on, play basketball on, and the like. Dixie Highway rezoning, this is to implement the recommendations that the ULI had for Dixie Highway. And I mentioned the Dixie Highway fence already, and then our one-time partnership with the Historical Society to assist them with the Butler House renovations. Within stormwater, all of these projects were of the highest priority within our stormwater master plan. They're all moving along. They're all part of this budget. These are projects that take place within communities to help with their property and increase our infrastructure to protect their property from floods and storms. Within road and bridge, proposed projects, as you can see here. Next page. Utilities, again, continuing with their automatic meter reading, a huge enhancement for our residents to allow them to see in real time their water usage, as well as to allow us to know when there's anomalies within their usage, so we can indicate them of leaks before we get out there a month later to read it. Also, the Ion Exchange project, again, that is a huge project that we're looking to do, over $18 million, all meant to keep with the coming standards that we will see from the federal government as it relates to PFAS chemicals. And then within solid waste, again, we're going to see about $1 million estimated disposal cost increase. We have started our compost pilot program, and we're looking to do a complete overhaul of our carts with a cart replacement program. I won't go through all the personnel changes. We've been through this several times, but again, this slide shows all the personnel changes that are being recommended in the budget this year. Here is our capital projects that we have, and there's more slides on our capital projects. But what this does is it shows how we plan to fund those, whether it be by grant, loan proceeds, or the issuance of debt, use of general fund, undesignated fund balance, as well as the total. So here we wanted to make sure that it was extremely transparent about how we intend to fund these projects. Next slide, please. You can see the proposed use of fund balance within each one of these funds. It indicates whether or not these are carry forwards from the previous fiscal year or what may be new. In the general fund, it's a proposed use of $4.7 million of new use to fund projects like the Historical Society, contingency, and other capital projects that we had on the previous slide that were in that list. Utility fund, through the master plan, this was the planned approach of use of undesignated fund balance. What's good to see is that with the changes that we have made, we're seeing less of reliance on the undesignated fund balance for operating expenses, and we're starting to be able to see that turnaround, as well as to prepare for the debt financing that we'll see for these major capital projects in the coming year.
David, you talked about the money that we pulled from the fund balance to go towards basically our water rates for the residents. One of the reasons what we did is we pulled from that to lessen the impact on them on the increase that we were doing, which was the first increase we'd done in 15 years.
But that was within the solid waste fund. Yes.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Thank you.
You're welcome. Next slide, please. Just to go into the undesignated fund balance a little bit more, these are estimates because as we report our undesignated fund balance, it's a snapshot in time at the close of the books of each fiscal year, which are always behind where we are today. So the last annual consolidated financial report that we issued was 2022, where it was reported that we had a fund balance of 39.2 million. However, in FY23, 10 million of that was reserved already for ARPA funded projects, the ones that we use for general governmental fund replacement. And so that lowers it down. And additionally, there were also some dollars, 4.8 that we already just talked about that were used for the mid-year budget amendment for various projects and considerations that were associated. One of which the mayor just talked about, using some of the fund balance to offset the rate increase on the solid waste fees. So we're estimating that by the end of 23, we're going to see a $24.4 million fund balance, but that does not include any contribution to fund balance that we might see from having either higher revenues than expected or lower expenditures than expected. And we do think that we'll have some, but certainly not as great as we've seen in years past. I think we're in a position right now where we're starting to see the expenditures that we have asked for being used, as well as trying to still absorb within the budget the inflationary costs that we're seeing. And I just quite frankly see the staff getting a lot more done out there in years than we have in years past, when COVID kind of really had an impact on the workforce in terms of how many people we had to actually get the work done. So I give them a lot of kudos for that. This does meet our current fund balance policy of maintaining compliance with a minimum of 10% of the general fund operating expenditures plus transfers. Next slide, please. We talked a little bit earlier about the issuance of debt for some of our general fund capital projects. Here it is here. It's approximately 11.8 million. And these are the projects that we intend to use them for: City Bridge rehabilitation, the ERP implementation, Pioneer Grove Corridor Streetscape project, citywide street lighting, and the International Fishing Pier. We have analyzed the issuance of our debt with our financial advisors. We have a very low debt ratio. This is a depiction of the anticipated debt over from now until 2048. And it also breaks it down by the existing debt versus new debt and anything else that we may see. And this is basically looking at our CIP over the 5 years and looking at a funding strategy to do that. Next slide, please. Again, anticipated issuance of debt. This is in the water and wastewater fund. This was all anticipated through the master plan and the funding strategy to get these projects done. So the first tranche would be a $12.8 million for the ion exchange design and some other projects that we had listed in the master plan. Once we get done with the design of the ion exchange system, we'll come back for a second issuance of debt to actually complete that project. Remember, it's an $18 million project. So this is the planned issuance of debt within water and wastewater. Again, this is the working with our financial advisors, a depiction of the proposed capital improvement plan, or the master plan, if you will, and the debt service that would support the program. All right, we will not go through, and I'll save you all from going through the entire capital improvement plan. I'll just leave the slide up for a moment or two so you can take a look at the various projects that are in the CIP. These are the general obligation revenue bond projects: Tigner Center, City Hall, Center for Active Aging. Talked about the general government capital projects already. Here they are listed again. Capital improvement plan for our utility fund and the projects that it includes this year. Stormwater Fund Capital Improvement Program for this year. This is the vehicle replacement schedule across all funds for this fiscal year. So I want to take a moment. I talked a little bit earlier, we showed those slides where we had City of Deerfield Beach and we showed Sunrise, Tamarack, and we showed the values within each category of assessed value. What I want to tell you now is that when you look at the data, 42% of our residential properties fall at or below this average condo value of about 117,000. So what that means is 42% of the residential properties in the city of Deerfield Beach are at or below approximately $117,000 of an assessed value, which is what is used for the purposes of being taxed through the ad valorem. Our average single family home value is $224,000. We have 33% of our residential properties, both condo and single family, between that 117 and that 224. When we look at higher assessed valued homes, those of about 500,000, we have 3.7% of our residential properties at 500,000 and above, assessed valued at 500,000 or above. So what is the property taxes going to look like for these various ranges of homes? Okay, so you take the taxable value or the assessed value minus the standard deductions, you end up with your final tax value of $67,700. The city ad valorem taxes, when you apply the millage rate to it, is $423.82. Okay, the fire assessment fee is at $310. So the annual amount of obligation for city taxes for that property of $117,700 is a total annual of $733 or 82 cents, $61.15 a month. So what does that look like over, as it relates to last year? So we're going to assume that this property was homesteaded. So we're going to assume that it valued at 3% to get to that 117. So how much more will this property be paying this year? A total of $2.96 a month on their escrow, assuming that they have an escrow account. So I went through the entire methodology there for that condo value. You can see the same thing for the single family value. Monthly increase for our average single family home, $4.35, and for the other 3.7% of residential properties we have in the city, be a minimum of $24.47 at that $500,000 value. Next slide, please. So again, in summary, the recommendation with all of the proposed budget initiatives, programs, capital programs, and services provided to our residents and businesses is an operating millage rate of 6.0018 mils. With the debt service, that is a total millage rate of 6.2538 mils. And a fire assessment fee currently drafted with the preliminary rate resolution at $324. That will go before you. The fire assessment fee goes before you during our second reading on September 13th. For budget purposes, all transparency, we budgeted at $310. That concludes my presentation for the evening. I know I did go rather quickly through some of the slides, but again, these were presented during the budget workshop and the presentation is available for the public should they want to review that again.
Thank you. Commissioner Preston?
Thank you, Mayor. I had some of my constituents call me and ask me to explain the rollback rate. How is that applicable to the millage? I gave a feeble attempt and but that's all question marks. So would you explain the rollback rate, please?
The
And I have
roll,
another question for you.
sure. The rollback rate, you're statutorily required to report the rollback rate. The rollback rate means that in order to bring in the same amount of ad valorem taxes as last year, your millage rate would be X. That the layman's term approach to it.
It's pretty good. Yes. So that you do not look at new construction. So minus the new construction. It's actually in simple, the tax rate that would yield the same total dollar amount of tax revenue as was produced in the prior tax year had there been no new construction.
So that's a statutory.
Requirement to be, yes, to present that. Absolutely.
Okay. And so you said that as far as the fund balance is concerned, we would pretty much be at 24.4 million, correct?
I believe at the end of FY23, that will be at or around there. Correct.
Okay, so how does that compare to other cities around in looking at their fund balance versus ours?
There's no apples to apples comparison on fund balance. Every city is going to have a different fund balance policy. Some of them are going to have things within their operating budget that some of them include transfers, some don't include transfers. Some cities have special assessments on things that we might have in our operating millage rate. So like for instance, we talked about Pompano having a $500,000 for fire, right? That's separate and distinct from their operating millage rate. So every city looks at their overall fund balance a little bit differently. What I can tell you is that if one standard, just without going into a lot of detail, would be look at 2 months of operating expenses. All right. So for us, that's approximately $25 million. So we're right at about that target if you want to target it that way. But there's several ways to kind of to evaluate that. That's what we'll be doing in the next in this next quarter. Now that we get through the budget, our finance department is going to turn their attention to fund balance policy, come back with some recommendations and rationales for that fund balance policy.
Would you say that our fund balance is healthy, very healthy? I mean, where do we sit as a city as far as your consideration would be?
I would say that it's currently adequate, absent a renewed fund balance policy that I want to bring before the city commission. But I think we're at a stable rate. I think we're at about where we should be, at least as a minimum. Okay. Many agencies, what they do is they set a minimum fund balance. Okay. Say we are not going below this, but we like to be here. And so they have a minimum and they have a target, right? So they establish both. They seek the target, and then they set a policy for what they do when they meet that target and what they want to do with that excess. Many times they reserve that for emergency use, one-time purchases, capital expenditures, things of that nature.
Because the concern has been that where we sit with fund balances, that if something was going to be extended to the public, this would be the time to do it, being that we sit where we sit with fund balances. And that's where the talk came about, maybe lowering the millage somewhat. And what would be your primary concern with that?
Twofold. One, reducing the undesignated fund balance that we have. I think the uses that we have proposed in this year's budget, again, are consistent with best practices, and they're not frowned upon by rating agencies. But the minute you start using undesignated fund balance to lower a millage rate, that's a compounding effect, because you're not next year. What do you do? Right. So in other words, you've lowered your millage rate. You've done so by funding your operating expenditures with undesignated fund balance that next year you have to play catch up on.
So if I'm hearing you correct, you could lower it, but in lowering that rate, it would not be sustainable to the next year.
Correct. So that sometimes you can create a bit of a yo-yo effect with your millage rate by lowering it initially and then having to raise it back up in some cases. Now, obviously, you don't know what next year is going to bring in terms of revenues, whether there's going to be increases or decreases. So I'm really speaking of just on what we've seen in recent years, right? But as it is right now, we've maintained our millage rate and been able to, maintain that with this high inflation that we discussed through the budget presentation and the increased costs that we've had, as well as lowering other expenses.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you. Commissioners? Comments? No? Okay. Thank you. Is there anyone from the public that would care to comment on this item? Yeah. Well, come on up and say whatever you have. If you have some questions, we can try to get them answered for you.
Good evening, Mayor Gantz, distinguished commissioners. I just had one
I'm sorry,
question.
your name and address for the record.
Roger Freitag, 418 South East 2nd Street, Deerfield Beach, Florida, 33441. I only had one question for Mr. Santucci. Oh, I'm not even know if I can say that or not, but with regards to the presentation, only homestead that was shown in that entire presentation was the homestead number of 54% in the city of Deerfield Beach. I'm curious as to what the homestead percentage is for all the rest of the cities that you used in comparison for your slideshow this evening. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else? Sure, come on up.
Lucia Del Genio, 707 North Shore Drive, Deerfield Beach 33442. You mentioned something about the PFAS removal. I don't know how that's going on because I talked to you about that, about fluoride and chemicals. And then I try to talk to Mr. Bogan. Nobody ever returns the call, ever. I mean, I did get to talk to the aide. He said he would share some information with Mr. Bogan, but nobody ever returned any information or I was trying to be part of their meeting on that for the county
Regarding the fluoride in the
regarding
water.
the
Yes,
fluoride
ma'am.
addition plus the removal of the forever chemicals.
Mhm.
And part of their agenda had 31 pages, and I went through every item, and I saw for the past meeting for the Broward County, and I didn't see anything about the cleanup of the water, only about the waste water. And so you mentioned something about PFAS. Do you know what they're doing as far as removing that? And if there was any talk with the fluoride with the county? And I don't know if he can respond to me now, but
We'll get that answered. for you.
okay. And if you could contact Mr. Bogan and ask him to the courtesy to return my call,
Yes, ma'am.
I would like to participate on that with the water cleanup. Very important to us for
Thank
for
you.
our health. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Good evening, Commissioners, Mayor. Felicia Portier, 140 Northeast 5th Street. Just a couple of clarifying questions. Sorry, I wasn't at the budget workshops. But is the FAU Boulevard improvement, is that postponed to coincide with the coming development of the 10th Street corner? And in regards to the Dixie Highway rezoning and the associated costs, could you give me a little idea what all is included in there? Because I think I saw 2 or 3 line items for Dixie, for the Dixie corridor.
Okay.
Thanks.
Thank you, ma'am.
My name is Ed Tobia. I'm 1590 Southeast 10th Street, Deerfield Beach. I guess not really questions on the current budget because I wasn't here in the prior meeting, but going forward, Mr. Santucci, on the debt service going forward with increased rates, what's that going to impact the future for Deerfield with those rates? And then also on the automated reading project, typically old water meters tend to run slow significantly. So there'll be a pretty big revenue pickup, I assume. And so how will that impact the rates going forward once the program is implemented? Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
Demetrius Xenakis, 1200 Southeast 15th Ave.
I'm sorry, name it one more time.
Demetrius Xenakis, 1200 Southeast 15th Ave. Question for Mr. Santucci. Regarding the ERP line item of $4 million, what is the annual maintenance? Contracts of this type are typically 10 years for 10%. I don't have experience in municipal though. And just curious, is there going to be an impact on the IT department? Will our employees actually have to do maintenance? Are we hiring anyone additionally? And who's the vendor, or what are their responsibilities going to be there? That's the other thing, just somewhat related, is the city uses a lot of different payment systems, and I'm just wondering if we've ever explored sort of a unified payment system so we don't have, citizen data. We've had a lot of breaches. It seems possible to have our parking meters, our parking permits, all these systems paying our water bills, all be using like one system rather than a different vendor for everything. So
Thank you.
Dan Hurst, 330 Southeast 19th Avenue. If not now, when? If not now, when? That is the lament of the Deerfield Beach taxpayer who for the 5th year in a row gets no reduction in the operating millage rate from David Santucci. This despite the fact that Deerfield Beach has more money pouring into their coffers than at any time in the city's long history. David Santucci just spent 10 seconds on talking about increased income and 10 minutes talking about increased expenses. So much for fair and balanced. The city got $16.3 million from the federal government, $6.3 million more from property taxes, saves $850,000 by charging the taxpayers that pay with credit cards a processing fee, raised all 5 city fees for this coming fiscal year, some by over 20%, and will soon receive another $6.5 million from the FAU land sale. Again, the taxpayers ask, if not now, when? We know David Santucci's philosophy. He would rather spend money on more city projects than return any funds to the taxpayers in the form of lowering the millage rate. David Santucci thinks he knows how to spend your tax dollars more wisely than you do. Contrast David Santucci's pompous attitude with the mayor of Boca Raton's I strike the word pompous from the record. Contrast David Santucci's attitude with the mayor of Boca Raton's thoughts on the same topic. When talking about his town's operating millage rate, Boca Mayor Scott Singer earlier last month said the following: "We want the money in the taxpayers' pockets so they can use it wisely." David Santucci's attitude is not surprising. He is a government bureaucrat, and by definition, they will never give a penny back to the taxpayers. However, the commissioners are very fond of reminding us that they decide policy and no city employee can tell them what to do. I've even heard Commissioner Parnas say more than one time that the buck stops here. If so, then why did the commission make lowering the operating millage rate one of David Santucci's main written goals on his last performance evaluation? I know what David Santucci's reasoning for not lowering the millage rate. What is the commission's reasoning for not lowering it? Mayor Gans himself said in August 2022 that some of the reserve money needs to start going back to the taxpayers. How many times have we heard the commissioners say every year at budget time that they would like to see the operating millage rate lowered next year? Well, next year is right now. If not now, when? The reduction in, may I have another minute, Mayor? The reduction in the operating millage rate I am proposing is only a modest 5%. The city could afford a lot larger reduction, but hey, you have to start somewhere. The corresponding cost of a 5% reduction is only $3 million. This money can be taken from our $39 million general reserve without having to cut one single penny from any existing city services or programs. I've already done the math on how much the average Deerfield Beach homeowner would save. Based on Marty Kyer's information, the average taxable value of a Deerfield Beach single-family home is $224,000. The savings would be $75 annually. How many low-income taxpayers or seniors on a fixed income could use another $75 in their pockets to buy a pair of shoes or be able to purchase their medicine? I'm sure whatever they do with the money, it will be better used than if David Santucci still had it.
Katie Freitag, 418 Southeast Second Street. My biggest worry and concern out of the slides is the 54% number. Only 54% of the homes in Deerfield are homesteaded. That means only 54% are permanent residents. The rest are snowbirds and a huge increasingly number of Airbnbs. How do we address that? At the last meeting, there was a discussion regarding where do we see Deerfield Beach going? Where do we see it flourishing and promising us into the future? Are we developing? Are we really spending significant time developing Pioneer Grove? Are we really figuring out what is the vision of this sleepy little beach town? Are we keeping out the 7-story condos? Are we keeping out all these apartments built straight up to the street corner? Those are the kind of things that we really need to look at when we're developing any kind of a budget and any kind of process of capital improvements in the city. I don't mind the millage rate being the way it is, as long as the money is being spent properly with realistic values, with realistic return of investment back to the citizens. That's the key of every single budget. And it should be the number one factor on the top of everybody's pages.
Thank you. Anyone else? Anyone online? Okay, I'm gonna close it to the public. Mr. Santucci and staff, can you guys, so regarding the 54% homestead, I think that was Mr. Freitag's question. I think it's something that Mrs. Freitag, I'm not saying anything out of line, that you guys are connected and related in some way. Okay, good. I'm just making sure you're okay with that. I didn't blow the whistle on anything, but okay. So both of them have that same question regarding 54%.
Sure. So first, also think about the fact that not only could it be snowbirds, could be rentals, lots of rentals. And how do we compare to others? I think it's a great question. I don't have that information. I know where we stack up, but I can certainly get that information from the property appraiser and get back to Mr. Freitag with that. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Thank you. We had a question regarding, I would imagine it has I'll frame it in a way that applies to the budget, since your question's not out on its own by itself, but you had mentioned about the removal of some of the dangerous chemicals in the water and future issues that might happen with the county to control whether or not we have fluoride in our water.
Correct. The county does control that. It is a county decision that we must put fluoride into our water. That's nothing that we can control. In terms of PFAS removal, that is, it's becoming more and more important across the country. And as we talked about the ion exchange project and some of the other things that we're doing, this is us putting our best foot forward to get ahead of the federal regulations that are likely to come down to regulate those PFAS chemicals. So the ion exchange system it replaces our lime softening system, and it will help address that issue.
Yeah. We will talk to Commissioner Bogan's office to see if we can get more information for you. As far as the Dixie Highway rezoning, can you comment on that, give a little more detail on, because we know that's in a couple of budget line items.
Sure. So when you go through the land development code and you want to do a major rezoning, it is a quite a large effort. And we're looking to implement the changes that were recommended by the ULI. So they talked about different.
For everybody, the ULI is the Urban Land Institute, which is an organization that comes in filled with experts in this type of planning. They come in and give recommendations to a city and do an analysis and see where you're at and see what could be done to help improve areas. They worked with us, and that's what helped us build Sullivan Park. It was based on recommendations by the Urban Land Institute.
Correct. So we're looking to, through that study activity that they did with the city, we're looking to try to implement those zoning changes to try to lay the groundwork for improving the area.
And also regarding that with the FAU improvements, those have not been stopped.
Has not been stopped. It has been postponed. First and foremost, we needed to reduce the budget in order to balance it. And we were able to take advantage of the fact that we do have the parcel at 1045 that is got the community participation component to it. So we're thinking we can get some funding from them to help offset the cost of that project, as well as FDOT, who's going to have to do some harmonization off of 10th Street onto FAU Research Boulevard. So we're trying to take a creative approach to make sure that we can fund that project in its entirety, but just waiting a little bit to get that done.
Okay. And regarding the debt service and increased rates and the automated meter readers?
The impact to debt service, I did provide that information on a few of those slides. So we will see an increase in debt service on the general fund over the course of the next 3 to 4 years, and then it tapers back down. It's certainly, as I mentioned, within our debt, we have a very low debt ratio. So our financial advisors have looked at that, looked at our approach to funding our CIP, and feel very comfortable and confident that we can absorb that, as well as within the utility fund as well.
And the fluctuation of rates, does that affect us?
Actually, he's absolutely right. Sometimes when you implement an AMI, it starts to provide you some real data on these meters that were older and they're not turning as fast. So frankly, if you remember through my presentation, we talked about a $2 million annual increase on our wastewater from Broward County. So that was nothing that we ever anticipated within our master plan. So if we do realize that, that'll be a very good thing for us with not having to do any additional rate increases and hopefully just to absorb it based off of what the true costs are and usage of the water is on these various meters.
So basically what I was during our workshops that we had regarding it, because our water department has to run, it is a enterprise fund. It has to be self-sustaining. It can't make a profit. It has to be self-sustaining. We got a $2 million hit that we did not expect coming from Broward County that we're hoping that those increases in revenue might be able to offset it. Keep in mind, we haven't had a water rate increase in the city of Deerfield Beach in 15 years. So, I mean, we've held that off as long as possible. And even now it's still pretty minimal with what was increased. Now it is expected to go up in the next several years because we have to. One thing we haven't been doing, we haven't done a great job of this because really we didn't have the revenue to do it, is to be able to make those self-sustaining. We had a lot of people saying, the city said we wanted an audit to take a look at some of our finances, see where we're at. The one recommendation that came back is we need to do better in our enterprises funds to make sure that they're self-sustaining. And we weren't doing that. So that's the one big takeaway that came to the audit, despite what many speculated was going to happen. The one big thing that came in from the state audit that said this is something we need to work on. And this is efforts that goes towards that. Hope that answers that question. Hold on one second, please, if you don't mind. Demetrius Semekis brought up the ERP.
Yes, the annual maintenance cost on the ERP will be somewhere between 400 to 500,000 annually. It is a cloud-based solution, so the maintenance on the software, other than updates and things like workflow and these sorts of things, will all be done within the cloud. But we did budget for a position, which is an ERP coordinator, who will come in and be able to manage the entire ERP program for us. That was in the budget for this year. So we did bring in additional resources. The vendor is Tyler Technologies. Yes, our payment systems, it can be rather complicated to change payment systems. But that is something I recognize and something I'd like to improve, because I do realize, and in some cases, we're not gonna be able to get around it, where we have, one system for our parking meter, we have one system for our utilities, so on and so forth. But I do think that we can improve in that regard. I do want to mention that since we did change the payment system several years ago on utility payments, we have not had any breaches with our new vendor.
Look, to be honest with you, our payment systems and the way that works, it's been extremely frustrating for us. We've been pushing for an ERP system, an improved one. We have in the city for several years now to get it going. It's government at its worst and working extremely slow to get us towards that. It's been extremely frustrating, not at our worst that we're doing a worse job. I think we could have done better, but we're on a right path to get that in place because we are still using time cards, antiquated punch time cards in some areas. So this is a big step for us to get towards there, but there's lots of room for improvement there. We had questions regarding this question is more comment, but saying that it seems to be an attack on Mr. Santucci's philosophy, but again, in the comparison was made by Mr. Hers, he spoke to the mayor of Boca, and yet he's talking about the city manager of Deerfield Beach. Well, I can tell you the mayor of Boca, if you go back to the numbers that we saw and where their revenues are and their values, I would love to be, I could tell you, I could put a lot more money back in your pocket if I had the revenues and values of what we have in Boca Raton compared to Deerfield Beach. We've outpaced the county this year. We're doing great as far as improving, but we're not Boca. And for all of you who may live in the Cove, move your house north to Boca Raton on the east side of Federal Highway. You wouldn't be able to live there. We saw the numbers, we saw the stats. Most of their houses, their second highest, thank you if you want to bring that up, their second highest values are homes that are assessed at over $1 million. You compare that to Deerfield Beach, it's a matter of fact, if you want to flip that upside down, that's Deerfield Beach. Complete opposite. We don't have the same revenue coming in. It's that simple. And I'm pretty sure by putting money back in the pockets of the residents with what we're dealing with, I don't see those residents providing the services that we need to provide to people that really can't afford to do it themselves based on the values of the homes that we have. I don't know of people in the public sector that are doing all of these services that we're providing. And as far as, this commission's philosophy, because it is our decision-making up here, we get a recommendation, we make decisions. More city projects. I haven't heard of what projects you want to eliminate, what projects aren't worthy. What we've heard is, and we heard tonight from Mrs. Freitag, are we investing our money right? Are we doing what we can with that money to increase things, to, I don't know, maybe not create a scenario that we have in which we've got people being forced out of their homes. More city projects are needed. All of us at home, if you've got a car, I don't budget every single year that I need new tires. Every single month, I know I'm going to need new tires in 4 years. I need to budget every single month for that. What happens is when it hits, it hits. And you got to make sure you got the money to pay for it then. That's what most realistic people do when they look at their household income. You've always put a little in your savings, but you don't specifically say it's for that. There are some years where you're like, look, my budget for my automobile is going to go through the roof this year. I got to get new brakes, whatever it is. That year it went up. Talk about why it's funny because now our operating budget that we talk, everybody says that operating millage is a big deal. Our overall millage rate has gone down. It has gone down. Our operating hasn't. Part of the reason why, and it was pointed out, what is the difference between the revenue we took in and our expenses going up? What was the difference between that, Dave?
The difference.
Revenue that came in, the extra revenue came in,
Yeah.
and our expenses going.
Ad valorem revenue came in higher than last year at approximately $5.7 million. We had increases in the general fund operating, and the larger things. We didn't report everything, obviously, in the budget presentation. There were more, at about $9.3 million increase, while also reducing the expenditures by over $11 million.
And look, I believe that we need to at some point, make sure that our reserves don't get to a point that they're more than what they need to be and we can start giving back to the residents. And yes, one of the goals of Mr. Santucci was to lower the millage rate. That is one of our goals. But when you have expenses go up like that, you have to pivot at that point. You can't expect revenues that aren't matching what the increases are and still reduce revenue intake on at the same time. You can't really do that. It's an unfair position to put anyone in because you're cutting services. And that's something that we just can't do. There's certain projects that we don't want to do. I haven't heard anybody say which project they want to eliminate. I think most of these projects that are in here, we've eliminated some, we postponed some, and they make sense. But, you know, our pier, the tip of our pier that got damaged in a tropical storm, which did not get declared as an emergency. So you don't get FEMA money for that. $4 million just for the tip of our pier. Imagine getting a hurricane in Deerfield Beach that hits like what you've seen over on the West Coast, and we're sitting with $24 million in our reserves, above what our emergency amount is. I talked to Jared Moskowitz. We had a meeting of the mayors with Jared Moskowitz 2 weeks ago. He said FEMA is expected to run out of money very, very soon. Look what happened in Maui and all the other natural disasters we've had. FEMA's running out of money. And what FEMA's going to do to slow that up is they're going to make it extremely difficult for reimbursements from cities. So we're going to be on our own to be able to do that. Now people say, well, go take a loan. You can do that. Do all that in the middle of an emergency. Cash in hand is a game player. If you don't believe that, go to Home Depot or any place else where there's things that are going on. They say, well, look, we got no power. You got cash? Cash is king when it comes to an emergency and getting things done quickly. So we need to have that, and we need to have that safely. So I think we're at a point that while yes, we'd like to be able to pull from those reserves to be able to do that, I don't think we're in a position to be able to do that. Ms. Freitag brought about Airbnbs and snowbirds. Airbnbs is something we can't control. I think everybody knows that. That's controlled by the state. We've been pushing. The state actually made some headway, we were hoping, and then it got dropped. Chip Lamarck has done a great job championing that, and they're working on it, but it's not something that's been able to occur. It's out of our control, though. As far as how many snowbirds we have, why would I don't know how you solve that. I don't think we can declare open season on snowbirds and people investing in our community. I think that's illegal. I could be wrong, could be illegal, but that would be my biggest concerns. Commissioner Hudak, I think that answers all the questions. Do you have something you want to add?
Just that, just for a point of clarification, what we'll be bringing forward on the pier really is, we did an assessment of the entire pier. So we look at damage to the pier over time. So it's not just a T portion that we'll be discussing. It's the entire pier and some of the areas that we need to improve upon on the substructure. So.
Commissioner Hudak, any question of Vice Mayor Parnas?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. The first thing I want to mention is to remind the individuals in the dais, as well as who are here, that not everybody in Deerfield Beach pays the same amount of money for your water. Individuals that are in unincorporated or former unincorporated Broward County pay almost double what other residents pay. So please keep that in mind when there's a concern about the increase in your water rate, because there are people in our city who pay a lot more for the same water. The second thing with regards to the emergency fund, costs are going through the roof. We've got $24 million in these reserves. And I mean, $24 million would probably cover the cost for debris removal. It probably, to rebuild City Hall here is going to cost over $24 million. Costs are going through the roof. So it's important to understand that $24 million, if we sustain a severe hurricane, is not going to go a long way. And that's something that we have to really keep in mind. It sounds like a lot of money. And yeah, if I had it in my bank account, it'd be a lot of money too. But in reality, the cost of doing business, especially in a disaster situation, it's
a lot more than $24 million if we experience what was experienced a week and a half ago up in the Big Bend area or last year over in Fort Myers. So it's a nice thing to have, but it's not gonna go very far. And that's something that I think individuals really have to keep in mind when it costs $14 million for the Tigner Center and probably $10-11 million for the Northeast Focal Point, the Braithwaite. So things are going, we saw, what inflation is like, and we have to keep that in mind that our emergency fund did not keep pace with inflation. Thank you.
Thank you, Vice Mayor.
Well, since my name was mentioned, let me say this. I will never vote to decrease our safety fund reserve. The hurricane on the West Coast is estimated at $6 billion in damage. How much is enough? We got hurricanes right now out in the ocean in the Caribbean that could hit us next week. You gonna write a check, sir? Rebuild your house, maybe? No. We have to be prepared to house, to feed, to medically take care of our citizens in case of an emergency. And that costs money. Let that sink in. FEMA doesn't say, great, I'm writing you a check tomorrow. Here's $20 million. Doesn't work that way. In the meanwhile, people have to eat. People have to have a place to sleep. Clothing, medical supplies. We're prepared as well as we can be for an emergency. But how much is enough? I asked, somebody show me a figure. What FEMA or anybody else says is enough for an emergency fund for a city that has almost 90,000 citizens. That's one. Two, a lot of people laugh at the snowbirds, but they pay almost double the taxes on their homes that we do because they're not homesteaded. I had one gentleman said, I remodeled my apartment. Went up from $1,500 to $4,200 in taxes. His $40,000 apartment was worth over $100 after it was totally remodeled and it was reassessed. And he's a snowbird. He has to pay it. And I say, thank God, because that eases the burdens on those of us that live here full time. Without the snowbirds, your tax bill would be maybe double. So I would never vote to decrease an emergency fund that you as citizens of Deerfield might need if we get hit with a hurricane or an emergency with a 747 goes down on Hillsborough Boulevard. That money is there to save lives and to rebuild them. And giving a little bit back to the citizens isn't going to solve their problem. But if we have an emergency, it will. It'll give the city the ability to help people in dire need and save lives. And to me, that's more important. I approve this budget.
Thank you, Vice Mayor. Commissioner Drosky.
Thank you, Mayor. This is a very seasoned commission. Let me start out with that. So this isn't our first rodeo. And one of the things about longevity is being able to pivot and change and to see the scenario and the landscape. And I think that's what we're doing as this commission. Commissioner Hudak, if my math is right, you're going into your 5th year up here. Commissioner Preston, this is your 9th year. Mayor Gans, this is year 15. And me and Commissioner Parnas, year 7. Yeah. So that's 36 years, over a third of a century that has been sitting up here. And so we've done this before and we've had to pivot. And I say that because I was one of the people that put in the city manager's recommendation to lower the millage rate, and it has been lowered this year. And let's be frank, it's coming from the debt service and not from the operating. So he has accomplished that goal. But it's a small amount. But what are we doing when we're lowering the millage rate? So one of the points in the presentation was that property values went up by revenues attributable to increased property values went up by $5.7 million. So basically that's $5.7 million in hand that we have to work with. But we were also told on slide 21, largely due to inflation, is that we have increased expenses to the general fund of $9.3 million. So your increase in your property values and the attributable revenue to that have already been offset by the increases due to inflation. So you're in a hole of 3.6 million from the get-go. So you have to pivot. You've got to do something. And so he's taken away on pages 25 through 29, and then the CIP projects 39 through 42 of the presentation tonight. Those are the projects. Those are what we had the budget recommendations for. We had the budget workshops. We had a workshop before this. This is not the first meeting on the budget. This is probably about our fourth or fifth meeting on the budget that we've had actually. So I did want to see the millage rate go down, but what are we talking about? I mean, what projects do we want to see? No one up on the dais or from the community, no one said, I want this, that, or that project reduced or cut. I haven't heard anyone say anything about that yet. So what projects do we want cut? So take a random number. You want $1 million? $1 million is 1 mil. Do you want 1 mil cut from the budget? Okay. So how much do you want? What projects do you want to accomplish by taking that $1 million out of the budget? And then what does that mean to the average taxpayer? So it's going to be probably $30, $40, for a year if we were to do so by that amount. So to the individual taxpayer, it's a relatively small amount, but to the city, it's a very large amount. That $1 million, that's $1 million that comes out of public safety or any of these other projects that we have here in the list. So what did I do in the meantime? So I have a very wide district. And so I went through the projects. And so some of the projects include stormwater. One of the projects is stormwater for Deer Run, which is in my district. Another project is Constitution Park, which is becoming very dilapidated. If you ever been to the facility out there, the building that is there, that's on the master list to get improved in the design. And then in addition to that, all of my district used to use the West Community Facility, which has been under repair for the last 100 years, it seems like. So the entire district uses that. And so I went to Deer Run and I said, do you want this stormwater project cut? And nobody said yes, that they want it cut. So I went to Deer Creek, which has about a dozen homeowners associations. And I talked to the homeowners associations and the presidents out there. Do you want Constitution Park cut, where you take your families and your children to play? Do you want us to cut that? Nobody wanted that cut. And then I talked to in the neighborhoods where I live that used to use the West facility for their homeowners association meetings. Then now they have to come all the way out east to the technology center by I-95. So the neighborhoods that I have that are up against the Turnpike and Hillsborough Boulevard now have to come all the way east past I-95 to have their homeowner association meetings. They want to go back to where they were in the first place to have those meetings. So they don't want it cut. So do you want to save $40 a year, or do you want these projects to go forward in the city? And my fear is if we don't move forward with these projects, then we fall behind. And you drive around the various cities in Broward County, and there's 31 of them, and you can tell which cities are making improvements and you can tell which ones are not. And I don't want to fall into the category of the ones that are not. If someone could convince me, hey, this project needs to be cut or that project needs to be cut and it adds up, then let's have that debate and that discussion. But I haven't heard it yet. And I was going to come in tonight with a very different mindset of holding the city manager to reducing the millage rate. But after talking to my residents, the ones that actually are out there that vote and that pay on this, they have a very different mindset. They want to see their city move forward. They want to see projects go forward in the city. They want to see new development. They want to see redevelopment in the city. They don't want to fall by the wayside and become the redheaded stepchild of Broward County. So while that wasn't my thought coming in tonight, that's kind of where I'm leaving, is to go forward with the city manager's recommendation on this budget. I did want to chime in because I did write a note real quick, kind of as an aside on the 54% homestead. I don't know that that's necessarily bad. If you had 100% homestead, that means 100% of those homes would be capped every year at the 3%. So the ones that aren't, the rental properties and the Airbnbs and the properties that are not homestead, they're not capped. So those taxes can increase as much as they want per the property appraiser. So if you had everything capped, I think that would be more of a detriment to the city than anything else. So I'm not so sure that's necessarily a bad thing, but that's an aside to the discussion here tonight. So taking the money from the reserves, sure, we could take the money out, $1 million, $2 million, $3 million that was suggested, sure. But I have always treated the reserves as our savings account. And I've been very much a vanguard of that account, because all it takes is one disaster, one event to wipe out our savings account. 24 million, as was pointed out, is really, it sounds like a large number, and it is a great number. And I would love to have that in my savings account. But to a municipal savings account, it's not exactly a huge number that's just gushing out there. One hurricane one tropical storm, which we weren't even under, did $4 million in damage to our pier. Imagine what a hurricane of some significant strength would do.
Yeah. Sorry. Thank you.
As Vice Mayor Parnas pointed out, there's a hurricane, or a soon-to-be hurricane, that's going to be somewhere in Florida's vicinity, possibly next week. Even if we don't get a direct hit from that, what bans do we get? What do we have? So I've always been a guardian of the savings account. That's money that is there, that the taxpayers need in the event of an emergency. Giving it back now sounds like a great idea, but when we have that emergency, I'm pretty sure we're going to be glad that money is in hand to pay. This commission may remember in 2017 when Hurricane Irma hit, and the phone calls, Mayor, remember the phone calls we got for the debris removal? Everybody wanted their debris removed the very next day. And I'm sure Commissioner Parnas got those calls too. Hurricane Irma, and we didn't even get the direct hit on that. Everybody wanted their debris removed the very next day. I got more phone calls than I could possibly remember on that. And the city of Deerfield Beach did it in 2 months. We were done by October. The Keys, they didn't clean up until after Christmas. You could drive there through Christmas and New Year's, and the debris was still there on the side of the roads. And the residents were not happy down there, and the residents were very happy here. And why we were able to do it, we had the money to pay it. I wouldn't necessarily say we're always going to get reimbursed by FEMA. I wouldn't put my bet on that pony, that's for sure. I mean, look at the clawback of the one situation that we had for the hurricane, was at Wilma, all the way back to Wilma, that we had the clawback that we're still fighting on. So, so I had a very different mindset coming into the budget, but after talking to my residents in the projects, again, pages 27 through 29 were the specific projects that were indicated, and then the capital improvement projects are on 39 through 42. I don't see a bad project on that list. There's a good representation of projects for all 4 districts citywide. I think they help move this city forward. We cannot be stagnant because as soon as you let that stagnation creep in, then it's going to overtake us, and there's no catch up to that. It's just like maintenance on your house. You can defer the maintenance on your house, and you can be cheap if you want, and you can put as little as you want to, but what's it going to look like? And when you finally have to make those repairs, how much catch up are you paying? You know, the mayor talked about your car. You could not do maintenance on your car. But then when you have to do the brakes, and you have to do the tires, and you have to do the ignition and whatever else all at once, then you get a big bill, and you're like, how did I get here? Well, I don't want to put the city of Deerfield Beach taxpayers in that mindset of how did we get here? We're holding the course. And I think this budget does that. I don't think anybody could have anticipated the inflation over the last year. There's just no way that you anticipated the amount of the inflation. And that's why I started this presentation by saying the 36 years combined experience that we have, we know when to pivot and when to move and when to make adjustment. We could hold hard and fast to our declarations that that the millage rate must be reduced, but I don't think that's in the best interest in the long term for the city, for the residents of the city of Deerfield Beach, at least not my district from what I heard.
Thank you, Commissioner. I'm going to go with Commissioner Preston since he hasn't spoken yet.
Thank you, Mayor. I still believe that we're in a position, despite all, to do something for the residents. Perhaps in lowering the rate, the millage, but if we can't do that, what could we do? That question should be asked. If not that, then what could we do? The problem that I have, though, is when the city manager was doing the explanation, I asked this question and he said, you know, his skepticism was to do that and then the very next year ask for it back. And to me, that's not real. Then it wasn't real. We gave $100, and I'm just using it a round figure. You give $100 to every resident. $100 could do some things and can help some people out. But the very next year, you take it away. It's not real. I would just say that if there comes a time where the fund balance get to a point where we're able to do something, that whatever we're able to do is sustainable, not to give it 1 year and then take it away. Because if you give 100, I'm telling you, when they take it away, now it's going to be 105 in taxes. It's not going to be the same. So it's not going to be, you know, nickels and dimes to dimes. It's going to be different. So that's the thing that bothered me, is that it's not sustainable. So hopefully we can get to a point that if we give something back to the public, and I believe that every resident in Deerfield Beach deserves something, but I would be deeply troubled to give it 1 year and then take it away, because to me, you never really gave it.
Commissioner Hudak.
I think if it's one thing that we've learned up here in the years that we've been up here is when you delay projects, you pay for it. And, you know, Commissioner Drosky talked a little bit about that. We saw that with the lifeguard stations. You know, we were appalled that they were going to cost $170,000 a piece, and we delayed it. And what did it cost us now? $270 a piece. That's because of inflation. That's because of the cost of construction. So by delaying these projects, if we were to do that, it's going to cost us even more in the future. It's a great idea and it's a great concept, but it's not reality. These are projects that are going to be moving our city forward. Individuals want to come to Deerfield Beach, and we want to make sure that we continue to have our city be a city that individuals want to come to. And how do you do that? By making sure that the utilities work, making sure that the parks are accessible, making sure that they're safe, making sure that we have police and fire, and that our water mains don't bust, and that our roads are kept up. All of these things cost money. And it's a great idea to say, okay, well, we've got all this money and we're going to give some back to the residents. But it is reality. What the city manager said is that you give the money back this year, you're going to have to get it back next year. And as you said, it's going to be a little bit more because of that inflation. It's the cost of doing business. It's the cost of providing the services that we're residents as well. We want in our city as much as everybody, you know, who's listening or is out here in the dais. So I understand the challenges. I understand everything goes up. I'm sure we can find some ways, whether it's a fire assessment fee, to try to help individuals out. But at this time, I don't see us being able to reduce the millage rate at all. So thank you.
Thank you. Look, you know, I've been here long enough that when our reserves were less than $10 million, and some of the same, one individual that I'm debating with on this issue tonight sitting in the audience, was there when that was happening too, and they wanted us to reduce it then also. Less than 10 million for our city, because that's what we had at one point. And we actually had people saying we want to, let's bring that that piggy bank lower than that. I mean, I've been here long enough, the days when we had that. Commissioner Drosky brought up cuts and the impact it'll have. It'll impact the full-time residents, mostly homesteaded, and that's what we do here out west. And you hear it east also. But if you want to take a landlord mentality to the city of Deerfield Beach, you can do that. You can take everything on the cheap, put minimal investment on it, do just the bare minimum to save yourself a little bit of extra money, put that money in your pocket, and you think that's okay. But that doesn't provide the services that people want. The people who live here and are invested in the city, that are homesteaded in the city that live here, they expect and deserve services that are equal to Boca Raton and everywhere else. And we do a pretty good job of doing that, considering that where we're behind the eight ball when it comes to revenues, because we are far behind our neighbor to the north. And yeah, some things they have, we don't have, but we do a pretty good job considering where we're at. And if you look at what our average is there, I mean, if the city's nothing but an investment property to you, and you're taking advantage of what we have been nationally recognized for by organizations saying they're one of the cheapest beach towns around, and you just want to use this as an investment property, yeah, these numbers, a reduction in the millage rate is going to impact you tremendously if you own several different apartments here in the city and you're not homesteaded here. I do question people that ask for a reduction in the millage rate in this town in which they're not homesteaded in, if they're going back to their town in which they're homesteaded in and asking for a reduction there. I'm going to say probably not. But they have no problem asking us to do that because they treat it like it's an investment property. For those of us who live here and have been here for a long time, it's a lot more than that. So it is complicated. I did hope that we were going to have the money to be able to do that and reduce it, because the point is, if not now, when? Yes. Well, that would apply if we didn't have all these other expenses going up. So that's one of the biggest things that we deal with. It's not an easy decision to make that. I don't want to make decisions on the cheap. I don't want to 1 year do one thing and have to jack it up before. I've been there and done that. We first put in the utility tax that we didn't have in this city. And all these other cities had it. We didn't have a utility tax. We first put it in, we dropped it by 1 mil. We dropped our millage rate. We had to jack it back up the next year because the revenues didn't come in and we were in trouble. And you want to know what the impact would be? So let's say, what do we say? We're at 24 right now. Is that what about?
Between 24 and 25,
Okay.
not counting the emergency reserve.
So if you take your average Deerfield Beach single family home, which believe it or not, because that's for homesteaded people, and their value is 224, which is the majority of those single family homes. If I take $5 million out, about almost $5 million, their savings for the year is $87. We're $5 million less as a city in our reserves, but I'm saving you $87 a year. Look, I'm not trying to make fun of that, but what I'm saying is, overall as a city, we're in trouble if we get our reserves down below a certain level, and I'm saving you $87 for the year. For a condo, it's $33.85 for the year is what your savings would be if I pulled $5 million out of my reserves that was suggested. If you happen to be one of the 3.7% in the city who are homesteaded, whose value is above $500,000 in a single family home, it's $225 for the year. Okay. $20 a month. My math is right. Am I right? I'm okay. I'll take my shoes off to count. It doesn't make sense to me. It doesn't make sense. Thank you for the presentation, City Manager. I appreciate it. I will say this. If any of my colleagues, if you don't vote for this budget and you haven't brought forward an idea on what you want to do to see change as far as a reduction, then in my opinion, you're not showing true leadership. It's going to be really easy to say, well, I just want us to do something and not bring forward a plan. If you want to reduce it, have a plan. Okay. If not, then I think we need to support the budget, which I do.
Motion to approve item 4.
We have a motion from Commissioner Hudak, seconded by Vice Mayor Parnas. Roll call, please.
Commissioner Drosky,
Yes.
Commissioner Hudak,
Yes.
Commissioner Preston,
Yes.
Vice Mayor Parnas.
Yes.
Mayor Gantz.
Yes.
Okay, we're now
Motion
on,
to approve item 5.
Second.
Motion to approve item number 5 from Commissioner Hudak, seconded by Commissioner Preston. Are we okay to proceed?
we are, did you have additional public comment? Is that where you're pointing towards me? Because we did present them together and did allow for public comment. So it's really up to the commission.
Okay. I don't have a problem with that for this one item. Go ahead. Is anyone from the public care comment on item number 5?
Roger Freitag, 418 Southeast Second Street, Deerfield Beach, Florida, 33441. After working for 8 weeks during Hurricane Irma last year in Fort Myers and Cape Coral and leaving the beautiful city of Deerfield Beach, let me tell you this, $25 million, nothing, won't do a single thing. No one will be able to contact the city. Most people won't be able to contact any emergency services, whether it be fire department or police department. Let me tell you from firsthand experiences. I was there 2 days after that storm went through with 2 generators, 80 gallons of fuel to help out good friends and family. No city, no government, no matter how small or large, will be able to help the citizens. Citizens need to be prepared themselves. Adapt, improvise, overcome. Prepare yourself. Prepare yourself every year. Cut your trees. June 1st is hurricane month. I don't see Deerfield Beach residents spending any money or any time pruning or maintaining their properties. You talk about debris removal. Well, if residents would take care of their properties, or if people would speak to code enforcement and have fellow residents take care of their own properties, we wouldn't suffer issues with debris removal. But let me tell you, $25 million won't do a single thing, and residents will have to fend for themselves. End of story. Thank you.
Dan Hurst, 330 Southeast 19th Avenue. I just have to correct some errors. I already gave the math, but apparently May or me got lost in the shuffle. I gave the math. 200, as Marty Kyer said, the Deerfield Beach single family home is $224,000 as the average. I've already done the math. You would save, if you deducted $3 million from the reserves, you would save $75 annually. So let's see, I own 6 condos. So that means I would save a whopping $450. If you think I'm going through this to try to save $450, I got a bridge I can sell you. But anyway, I have some specific questions regarding the budget that I wanted to ask during this portion. I understand the city plans on spending $5 million in fiscal 24 on the Pioneer Grove corridor. I now just saw a slide that actually has been cut to $4 million. So could somebody provide more detail and why will this reincarnation of the Pioneer Grove development be successful this time around? And what will that $4 million be spent on? And does anybody think it'll really be successful this time when no property tax incentives for developers will ever be provided? In Chad Grisek's solid waste budget, there is a line called additional considerations. I'm sorry, I always mispronounce his name. I apologize to him. So in Chad's solid waste budget, there is a line called additional consideration for 1.7 million. And I was just curious, what is that? The Office of Public Safety lists a fire rescue ambulance of 561,000. How many ambulances does that dollar amount buy? I also understand the city will be spending $2,340,000 on the Southeast 8th Avenue Stormwater Capital Improvement Project. Commissioner Hudak lives very close by, and I would like the city attorney's opinion and ruling on whether Commissioner Hudak voting on this project would be a conflict of interest since he would be directly benefiting from this project. And then finally, under the city commission section, can more detail be shed on why operating expenditures jumped from $21,000 in fiscal 22 and are now projected to be $114,000 for fiscal 24? This represents a 443% increase in only 2 years. So I wonder if we could get a little explanation of why this huge increase is taking place. Thank you.
Which one was that, Mr. Hirsch?
City, that's under the city commission section, and it's the operating expenditures line.
Anyone else? Anyone online? Okay, we close it to the public. I don't know if we can answer all this. I know, Mr. Hers, you've been given the opportunity. We tried to set up meetings with you to meet with the city manager because you've had questions before, and you declined to do that. So we can extend that to you again if you want to actually take them up on it and talk face to face with them on some of these. But I think we can probably answer some of them, I would imagine, here tonight.
Yes, Mayor, thank you. I think Mr. Hearns is going into each individual line item. I don't have that in front of me, nor do I have, I think, the time with us tonight to go through each one. As you mentioned, I've offered Mr. Hearns many opportunities to meet with me to discuss any issues he has. He continues to decline, but that's still available. Whatever I can't answer this evening, I will make sure that that's available for the commission at the next hearing, and I can also provide that to Mr. Hearns via email if he'd like that as well.
Excellent.
Yeah.
Thank you. No, I have no doubt that if you own multiple properties in the city and you're not homesteaded and you're not homesteaded in each one of those, yeah, it's going to affect you differently. But that's what happens when you invest in a small beach town. You're going to deal with those, and that's going to happen. I mean, I don't know what it's like in the town you're homesteaded in, but I would imagine they're probably faced with some of the same dilemmas that we are as well. Okay. That was item number 5. Closing it to the public. I don't see anything. We have a motion second. All in favor?
You need a roll call?
Yeah, roll call. Thank you.
Commissioner Drosky,
Yes.
Commissioner Hudak,
Absolutely, yes.
Commissioner Preston,
Yes.
Vice Mayor Parnas,
Definitely yes.
Mayor Gantz.
Just a simple yes.
Item number 6 is an ordinance of the City Commission of the City of Deerfield Beach, Florida, approving the budget for the Deerfield Beach Community Redevelopment Agency for the fiscal year beginning October 1, 2023 and ending September 30th, 2024, providing for funding through tax increment financing as provided for in Part 3, Chapter 163, Florida statutes, providing for severability and an effective date. This is first reading.
And I guess we should apologize to the public since this was already covered at the CRA meeting. This is what we're going to, correct?
Yes, but we do have to approve it also additionally at the City Commission level. Thank you.
Any comments? Yeah, is there anyone from the public that would care to comment on item number 6? We had a presentation during the CRA, both CRA meetings when we approved the budget. Would you like to go through another presentation so you can hear what it is?
No.
Yeah, I'm not sure if we can do that tonight, but we'll see what we can do.
Motion.
No, public, open to the public, go right ahead.
Only 4 items tonight, gentlemen. I wrote them out to make, Roger Freitag, 418 Southeast 2nd Street, Deerfield Beach, Florida. 33441. I hate to bring this back up. Unfortunately, I have to. Case number 2569, 170 Southeast 5th Avenue.
CRA budget, is that what you're talking about?
I thought this was the public.
It is, but on the CRA budget. Thank you.
In a minute. Next item.
Thank you.
Dan Hurst, 330 Southeast 19th Avenue. I'm here to talk about the CRA.
Thank you.
You're welcome. You're welcome. So a few specific line items and then a generality regarding what's going to be spent in the future. So this first line item, regular salary, it lists about 5 different positions. I would love to know the breakdown, but if you tell me it's better to do that through a Freedom of Information Act, I'll be happy to do it. But if it can be answered tonight, that would be great. Next question is regarding the ICMA pension. I know that Mr. Santucci loves to compare us to other cities. So I was just curious, this pension is at 8% that the city provides. The employees don't have to match it at all. I know usually in these type of programs, there is some type of match that the employees do, and then the city matches it, and it encourages savings. But I was curious, since we just did a pay and class study, maybe Mr. Santucci would have this off the top of his head and know, are there any other cities that have this lucrative of a benefit for their employees? Because I know in the private sector, I'm not aware of anything where it's an 8% and there's no matching. So I just was curious if he came across any other city that offered that. There's a line item here called other professional services as needed for $100,000. And that's a lot of money for a nebulous term. So if we can get a little bit of an explanation, maybe some examples of what that line item is talking about. I'm also just in the general sense of why aren't the CRA meetings on video? I know the commission meetings are all on video, and it would be a great help if the CRA meetings could be as well. And I guess the technology is there to do it. And then that way we could understand a little bit more about such new things that are coming down the pike, like the ride sharing program, learning about that in detail and what that $300,000 expenditure will get us, and how that differs from the ride sharing program that's already in place on the island. The next thing is, I'd like to know what involvement specifically will the Guy Harvey Foundation and their new executive director, Steve Roden, have with the CRA in building this $10 million structure. I know that it was brought up that they were going to play an integral part, but with their new leadership, I just wonder if that's changed at all and how that has affected the project. And now I noticed that the future acquisitions page has been changed. There was, for many years, I had that one extra minute. I know there was the acquisition of the A1A motel at the northeast corner of A1A and Hillsborough. That used to be on the list all the time, and now I see it's off the table. In this taxpayer's opinion, is probably the single most valuable piece of real estate left to purchase in the CRA district. And since in this just the budget, the CRA was able to show that they can borrow from the city's general fund. The money is there right now to purchase it, and holding it down the road. I just don't understand why we can't go forward. And especially putting money aside for the main beach parking lot, as Commissioners Hudak and Drosky want to do, is actually quite interesting. Someone should explain to them what OSOB stands for. Purchasing that motel again should be the #1 priority of the CRA before it sunsets in 5 short years. Thank you.
Mr. Hurst. Anyone else?
Daniel Shanetsky, 34 Keswick B, Deerfield Beach, 33442. Good evening. I want to spotlight one of the items that he brought up, Dan Hirsch, about the CRA program.
I believe it's hers, not Hirsch.
Hirsch, I'm sorry. Close enough. I apologize. It was a program, specifically the Rider Share. It was championed by Mayor Gantz, and basically we're looking at a 1-year pilot program for a Rider Share program in Deerfield Beach. I'm in favor of it. I think it's a great investment to Deerfield Beach on many levels. I actually contacted Miami, which started a rider share program using a company, an outside vendor called Freebie. Now, Freebie has 15 municipalities in Florida that they're under contract with. And what Freebie is, it provides free short distance transportation in custom electric vehicles. Electric vehicles, the benefits of those are, #1, it stops any environmental issues like CO2 going into the atmosphere. It's very clean energy. And the great thing about these rideshare programs is revenue is generated through the advertising placement on its vehicles, and this revenue goes back to the city. So I'm definitely in favor of that. These rideshare programs basically allows people to get on a specific app like Freebie and hail a free ride on their smartphones, and it will take them to any destinations, to the destination and back again. And this is great because it's great for all citizens of Deerfield Beach, both low income, because with low income, it would take them to grocery stores, food pantries, farmer markets, and more affluent people be able to go to local businesses, doctor appointments. And I'm on the Deerfield Beach Cultural Committee. We had some great events last year, the Deerfield Beach Jazz Festival and the Deerfield Beach Brazilian Festival. We could have probably increased attendance, probably triple, had we had this ridershare program. So I'm definitely in favor of that. I had contacted Miami, like I said, I spoke to a few people there, and they said it started at the beginning of the summer, the ridershare program with these electric vehicles. They said it's been a tremendous success. A lot of the drivers are ambassadors for their city, and I'm definitely in favor of it. So I think that's a great investment for the people of Deerfield Beach in the future.
Thank you very much, Mr. Shinsky. Anyone else? Anyone online? Okay. I'm gonna go and close it to the public.
Motion to approve.
Okay, we have a motion from the vice mayor. We don't have the presentation tonight. It's been covered at 2 different meetings that we have at the CRA. To give you the full presentation, those we can make available to you, but in that way you can have comment on it before our next meeting that we have. And I think a lot of the questions that Mr. Hers had were addressed in that. There are some that are not, but I think those can get answered for you before the next meeting, so you can have some input. And as far as the input, as far as the camera on the CRA meetings, I think that's a great idea. I have no problem with it. I kind of didn't realize you don't have it because I don't like to look at myself after the point. So I don't go back and look at them, but yeah, that I will talk to city staff about that. That would make sense. And yes, I'm a big champion of the rideshare program, and I'm glad we're doing a pilot program on it. So we have a motion from Vice Mayor.
Second.
Second by Commissioner Hudak. We have roll call, please.
Commissioner Drosky,
Yes.
Commissioner Hudak,
Yes.
Commissioner Preston,
Yes.
Vice Mayor Parnas, Mayor Gantz.
Yes.
We are now at the public comment portion of tonight's meeting. Persons addressing the commission shall state his or her name and address and may speak for 3 minutes unless extended for 1 additional minute by the mayor. This is the time for public comment on items that are not on the agenda. If you have public comment on an item that's on the agenda, the time to do that is after that agenda item is read into the record and the public comment period is open. A reminder, no comment shall be made related to the personal life or personal qualities of any person, and no language which would offend persons of ordinary sensibility shall be permitted.
Good evening. My name is Alex Pappas. My address is 3000 South Hiatus Road, Davie, Florida. This is addressing to Mayor Gaines and Vice Mayor Parnas. I'm here in respect of myself and my family because of the way that we were addressed on the day, August 22nd at the commission meeting, when we came to speak respectively and tell you simply what we saw. There's no reason to doubt our sincerity and tell us that we are not telling the truth. At the time of the incident occurred on June 5th during our company's presentation, we weren't aware that the possibility that it was something wrong and what we witnessed at all. We were there simply to work and help transport the materials for the presentation to the Deerfield Beach Cafe, the one that's currently there, not the one that's been created by Daniel Rossi. And so after the speech was given, so the incident that I'm addressing was that where we witnessed Danielle Rossi coming out of the purchasing manager's office, while we believe that she was there during the presentation because we saw her walking in before, during we were presenting. And yeah, that's all I have to say.
I have a question for you. Did
Yes,
you
sir.
actually see her viewing a video?
Sorry, say it again.
Did you actually see her viewing a video?
I didn't. So I'll tell you what I witnessed. I saw her come out with the purchasing manager.
Did you see her watch the video?
I didn't. I could not see her watching a video.
Okay, thank you. Appreciate it.
Good evening. I just wanted to follow up on my employee. My name is Tula Amana, 5030 Southwest 109th Avenue in Davie. And I'd like to address again the incident following up of August 22nd, this commission. And actually, I stand before you with a very heavy heart as to the events that transpired on that commission meeting. I believe that, first and foremost, I would like to explain actually and extend my sincerest apologies for the manner that I left. It was not according to my character or in respect for the proceedings and everything else, but in my 35 years of speaking actually to mayors and commissioners in the quorum again, I never behaved like that. But in this abrupt manner, I had to leave in tears because what I saw and heard truly shocked me and set me beyond what I can express really to you today. I think that you misunderstood that what I was saying bared any reference to what Mr. Dan Hers said, and it was kind of a negative comment. He started as such, but he was not representing me or speaking for me or my company. That was his comments, and I've heard him make quite a few negative comments, and people have labeled him publicly as toxic. Excuse me, Mr. Hers, but it's on Facebook and everywhere else. I met him for the first time on that day, August 22nd, when he invited me to meet with him and Vice Mayor Parnes at Nick's Pizzeria, where I let Vice Mayor Parnes know that in all due respect, I had to say that I would like this commission to consider Lou Moshakos for the Pier restaurant as being approximately 2.5 million more than Daniel Rossi in total, and much, much better project by Restaurateur that's highly respected. It was nothing said about me or my company or staying there. I was only upset because the name Deerfield Beach Cafe, which I created and I marketed for 10 years, it was misappropriated by Ms. Rossi as Deerfield Beach Cafe LLC, and that wasn't right. So that was a major issue that I had. So I expect that once I'm done speaking, that I wish that you would address the further questions we have as whether due process was followed in fact. And on June 20th, the agenda was wrong. The items you voted on June 20th was wrong. But for 2 months, because the best man won, I never said a word. I'm requesting 1 more minute, please.
Yes, ma'am.
So what I was saying to you then is that the best man won. And I want to let go to a better man. That's what I was saying to you. You did not see me to speak about anything for 2 months. I found another location and I'm moving. But I also want to move my house and everything else in the city. I love the city, the people. I want to continue working here. And I'm asking for your consideration for what I'm saying, because honestly, I think that a lot of the due process was not followed. You need to re-examine again for the good of the people and for the good of the city. And I'm not in the run. I was eliminated a long time ago. And I thank you very, very much again, respectfully. And I don't want to be negative. I asked for a private meeting many times. I was not granted in 10 years. And I just want to be respectful and not negative.
Can I ask you, Ms. Samana, can I ask you a
Please
question?
go ahead.
What was wrong on June 20th?
The agenda on page 540, it said that my bid was for 20 years. It wasn't. It was only for 10. It was a lot lesser than Lou Moshakos and Daniel Rossi. It might have been the highest amount, but it was only for 10 years. The other 2 bidders were for 20. And the ITN also specified that you need to negotiate with the top bidder, which was Lou Moshakos, and not go into an auction situation who wants to offer more, Danielle or Lou. I thought that was not a proper procedure. Regardless, I did say on that June 20th commission meeting that over Zoom that I could not compete with the 4 million that was being offered by Mr. Moshakos. Now, I don't think he wants the negativity. He doesn't want to be involved anymore from what I gather. Otherwise, he would have been here. He would have followed up with you. But I want to clear my position. And my position is There was some stuff that was not done properly. And the negotiation should have been with only Lumusagos. And if that failed, as per your ITN, then you go to the next one, which would have been Danielle. I was eliminated before that.
Thank you, Ms. Vaughn.
Thank you.
Roger Freitag, 418 Southeast Second Street, Deerfield Beach, Florida, 33441. I'd like to speak to you with regards to case number 2569, 170 Southeast Fifth Avenue. This property had some issues not following permitting, asked for multiple variances. Myself and the residents in that area received 3 letters on 3 different occasions to show up for a hearing in these city chambers. Well, the hearings took place and not one letter was sent re the outcome of the fines, et cetera, et cetera. As a passionate resident here in the city of Deerfield Beach, I took it upon myself to contact our city manager, at which point I was made aware of what happened. I would hope that going forward, that the city might change its protocol. I find this highly unfair and unusual that you send letters to us asking us to participate in a hearing, but once it's all over and said and done with, you don't send any letters at all telling us what happened. Secondly, residents are supposed to be the eyes and ears for the city when we see things that are going wrong. If we notified code enforcement of violations and violators, who protects those residents from retaliation by those violators? Thirdly, sunshine laws. Does the city have or provide a pamphlet or a booklet or a website, read the do's and don'ts on protocol when speaking, texting, or emailing our city officials? Fourthly, and in closing, I understand that our city officials were disappointed with allegations that were made wrongly during the recent Pier restaurant negotiation process. I, as a resident, am not disappointed about that. I am disappointed that taxpayers were forced into an election for term limits that wasn't needed. I thank you for time, and we talked about not spending and wasting money. I'm not the only one who felt that way about term limits. So let's try not to waste money where we can. Thank you very much. Have a good evening.
Thank you, Mr. Freitag. Is there someone else? Yes. Ms. Ruiz.
Linda Ruiz, 425 Northwest First Terrace, apartment 407, Deerfield Beach, Florida, 33441. Mayor Gantz, Vice Mayor Parnes, the other commissioners on the board. We at the Palms of Deerfield have an issue. It should have been emailed a picture of what's going on, which someone has came over there and dumped tires inside, tires on the outside of one of the dumpsters. My issue and concern is whose responsibility is this to remove them? Because that's going to be a fee, and it's a lot of tires, not 1 or 2 tires, 2 or 3 cars, a lot. So if you check your email and take a look at the picture, then you'll see what I'm talking about. Like I said, it's disgraces the property. So who's going to remove them? Whose responsibility is it?
We'll get an answer for you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Commissioner Preston just shared with me the picture. I did not see it not come through to me.
Good evening, Mayor and all the Board of Commissioners. And I'm just piggybacking on
I'm so sorry, ma'am. I need your name and address for the record.
Dorothy Gregory, 425 Northwest First Terrace, Palms Apartment 412. And we live in the same building. And I would like to just piggyback on what she was saying about someone came and dumped so many tires until the people cannot put garbage in the garbage bin. So my thing is, what is the solution to all this senseless behavior? People coming on property where they don't live and dumping all this excess trash, all these tires. It's not one or two, like you were saying, many tires, many old tires in these garbage bins. And we want a solution to the problem.
Thank you, ma'am.
Yeah, thank you.
Anyone else from the public?
Dan Hurst, 330 Southeast 19th Avenue. My goal and number one guiding principle ever since I bought a motel in Deerfield Beach in November of 2000 was to always tell the truth and look out for what was in the best interest of the taxpayer, whether that aligned with my personal interests or not. I have been very successful through the years in exposing items that would not have seen the light of day otherwise. This does take a considerable amount of time and effort, but it's how I give back to the Deerfield Beach community that I have learned to know and love. I know the city has great potential and it will flourish one day when all elected officials, not just Ben Preston, together with city administrative leaders, work together to do what is right for the taxpayers and put their personal desires and petty personal grievances aside. It was in this spirit that at the August 22nd meeting, I pointed out a mistake the city manager had made in not realizing that per city charter section 709, a supermajority vote is required when any lease or contract is awarded that has anything at all to do with the beach or pier. The charter even specifically mentions a pier restaurant. The ramifications of this oversight, though purely unintentional, are enormous. Numerous legal experts, both working for other municipalities and in the private sector, have informed me that the commission vote on August 1st that awarded the pier restaurant contract to Danielle Rossi also required a supermajority vote. The vote that night was only 3-2 in favor of Danielle Rossi. So Ms. Rossi lost the vote, and there is no provision in the city charter for a revote of any kind. With Danielle Rossi's loss on August 1st, the commission has two choices. They can hold a vote in favor of Lou Moshakis, the Cove restaurant owner, and see if he gets the necessary supermajority vote, or the commission can do what Commissioner Preston suggested and start the whole bidding process for the restaurant over again. But this time, the administration can learn from all of their egregious errors the first time around and make certain that none of those same errors are repeated. This will ensure transparency to the taxpayers, who will have no reason to question the whole process and declare, whether rightly or wrongly, that the proper procedures called for in the RFP and ITN were not followed, and that Danielle Rossi knew she was going to be awarded a 20-year lease to operate the pier restaurant before the RFP or ITN was first announced. This solution may also shield the city from any potential lawsuits that would arise from the city failing to adhere to and follow their own charter. A do-over is the solution that everybody, including Danielle Rossi, could be proud of, as it will lift the stench of improprieties from the air and allow all parties concerned to take a deep breath and a sigh of, may I have one more minute? All parties concerned to take a deep breath and a sigh of relief. And most of all, the Deerfield Beach taxpayers, who you all work for and are at the top of the organizational chart, will finally know beyond a shadow of a doubt that their best interests are being looked after this time around. I also want to quickly apologize to anyone who was offended by my posting a picture of Rebecca Medina regarding the city failing to post any meeting notices about tonight's meeting on the official city Facebook page until after the city saw my post on Sunday. I wanted to call attention to the city's oversight and took the post down as soon as I saw the city's posting. And in retrospect, I should have chosen a better method. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else from the public?
Katie Freitag, 418 Southeast 2nd Street. My first question is regarding the CRA and funds that the CRA has to spend in the CRA district. I believe there was a pop-up event at a park that was put on by the CRA. Cause I contacted special events and they said they didn't have anything to do with it. It was a CRA event, but it wasn't in the CRA district. So if the CRA has money to spend,
Where was it?
it was at Howard Mayo Park.
That wasn't a CRA meeting.
It was a CRA event according to special events. So if it wasn't, I know that Chris Morey was posting it and trying to get people to come to it. So if it wasn't a CRA event, then I can understand. My question is there's some other parks, including Pioneer Park, that are in dire need of some repairs. The playground is absolutely I can send you pictures. It has not had any love in a long time. There are many hazards in there, including electrical wires in the holes where there's no tops on the toys. So now the kids can put their hands all the way down in the holes. Even if the electric has been disconnected, it's still a safety feature, a safety hazard that should be addressed. There's a lot of issues there at Pioneer Park. So if the CRA has little money left in their budget, they could slide it that way, that would be lovely. Secondly, in regards to the Cove, the Pier restaurant, I know that there's just a lot of gray matter going on out there. There was breaches of contract of cone of silence. I apologize, cone of silence. And again, like I have mentioned before, I deal with a lot of governments. If I'm 4 minutes late on a proposal, it gets thrown out, it doesn't get accepted. If there is information in the proposal that is not cohesive through all of the bids, it'll get thrown out. If I'm being given information that I should bid 10 years and somebody else gets bid information that they should bid 20 years, that information is what the cone of silence is for. It's so that everybody gets the same information. They all put the questions in, they all get answered by one person. Nobody goes to anybody else. Nobody sends information to all the commissioners and all the mayors. Nobody talks to anybody else besides that one person in procurement who is in charge of that bid. And I think that's where we fell down a lot in this process. And I think it has muddied the waters to the point that it really does need to be started over. Everybody knows that it was not necessarily a fair playing field across the board. And I think that's something that needs to be addressed because it definitely is. It is muddying the waters and it does not look good for the commission. It sure doesn't look good for the city. And it's not going to look good for whoever goes in there. So thank you.
Daniel, come on. Oh, this gentleman, okay. Yes.
My name is Christopher Pappas, 3000 South Hayes Road, Davie. I would just like some clarification on the protocol. Basically, if Ms. Rossi was allowed to be in the purchasing manager's office, Mr. Bogdan, during our presentation. Thank you.
Thank you.
Daniel Shanetsky, 34 Keswick B, Deerfield Beach, Florida, 33442. I just don't think there should be any shade. I know a comment was made about the new Sawgrass to Seagrass Children's Museum by Sullivan Park. I don't think there should be any shade on that at all. I'm very excited about it. It's going to start construction in 2024. It's going to put Deerfield Beach on the map. Our neighbors in Boca Raton have the Gumbo Limbo Nature Center and Aquarium, which is world renowned. And in Pompano Beach, we have the Wahoo Bay Underwater Educational Marine Park and Shipwreck Park, which basically has an interactive art and experiments, live lab experiments, and educational displays. So our neighbors in Boca Raton and Pompano Beach have highlighted the fact that we have this great marine life here. So I'm very excited about the Sawgrass to Seagrass Children's Museum, which will be coming by next year. Again, I think it's going to put Deerfield Beach on the map. And I think it's going to be a premier community center in Florida that people all over the world will flock to. And I think it's a great thing. I'm very excited about it.
Thank you. Is there anyone online? Okay. Anyone else? Anyone? No? Okay. I'm gonna close it to the public. As far as And I will say this, Mr. Freitag, it is a little different to, we don't normally follow that policy of giving a follow-up to anybody who attended a meeting as far as letters go out, because sometimes we don't know who attends the meeting, and maybe if you spoke, if that's, you want to be contacted, if we had, as far as how things go with a hearing in which we have you attend, and we try to encourage people to attend. I'm going to take responsibility on that one, because I should have personally called you, because I know you and I had some very specific, multiple conversations about that. I should have called you and given you the outcome, but that's not normally what we do. And I don't know if we can, or if that's the best thing to do, but I'm sure staff could probably look into that, seeing that what that is. And yes, sunshine law information is really pretty clear cut. You can look it up online. I think that's pretty clear. Ms. Ruiz, Ms. Gregory, as far as those tires, I don't know what to tell you as far as stopping it, meaning I wish I could legislate stupidity, and I can't. We've tried, but as far as those tires, I mean, it is the Deerfield Beach Housing Authority over there.
We'll reach out to the mayor and see if we can assist them.
Okay. And I think one thing to talk to the housing authority about on that is to see if they can put up cameras. That way, if you get a license plate on there, it's gonna be very easy for us then to be able to figure out who would do that. I think that would just increase the safety over there also overall. So that's just something to talk about. Thank you. Let's see. I missed a few things. I don't think anybody, look, I'll address some of the other things before we circle back to the Pier Restaurant, because I think there's multiple comments on that. The pop-up CRA event, was that a CRA event at Mayo Howard?
That was an economic development activity. The only thing I can think of, Mayor, is staff may have confused CRA for economic development because Miss Maury plays that dual role.
So no, it wasn't a CRA event. That's not why they had it, but thank you for the notes. That was Pioneer Park where those issues are. And the new shocking thing that we have in there for the kids, you don't like that as a feature? It was when I was a kid, so I'm glad. I do appreciate that in all seriousness. Certainly safety issues like that, if you see it, immediately call us to let us know on that. I can't believe that it's hard to follow the outrage on this whole Pier Restaurant thing when you look at all the emails and what is said now compared to what's been said for the past month in these emails that we're getting. It's not what I meant to say. That's not what the issue was. This didn't happen. I can read you the emails. They're all public record. I mean, they're hard to follow, but if you read them, where's this outrage? Where's the irrefutable proof that we were promised? Where's the video? Where's all these things that say things were done wrong? You can't be the person putting a stench of impropriety on the thing and then say, hey, can you guys clear this up? You're part of the problem because you're not telling the full story and you don't have accurate information. And I'm going to ask the city attorney to clarify, because I know he's already spoken to you and clarified this, but I'm going to listen to my city attorney as far as how the proper procedure was done when it comes to the Pier Restaurant and how we voted with the supermajority.
So Mr. Hertz is referencing section 7.092 of the city charter, which provides the exception from the referendum requirement. And that is for upon a 4/5 majority vote, awarding of a lease or a contract for a Pier Restaurant. It is my opinion that the 4/5 vote that's referenced there that was required did occur. It happened at second reading of the ordinance that approved the lease. What was being referenced was a resolution from August 1st. That resolution awarded the solicitation and basically solidified the ability to do a final negotiation for the lease. And in fact, that specific resolution stated that a final lease will be prepared for the city commission's consideration. Additionally, I'd point out, I have to look at all the provisions of the charter, and there's an additional provision of the charter, and that's section 3.16, which has not been referenced tonight. And that section is what requires a lease of more than 5 years to be approved by ordinance. So in fact, in order to award a lease for the Pier Restaurant, it needed to be done by ordinance, which is what you did when you approved the ordinance on second reading on August 22nd by a 4/5 vote. And I think it was stated at that time by Mr. Hurst that that required a 4/5 vote. I agree with him there with respect to the August 22nd, but not, I just disagree with respect to August 1st. I don't read this provision requiring multiple 4/5 votes. And ultimately, because of our charter requiring an ordinance to approve a lease more than 5 years, that's what occurred on August 22nd. So that is my opinion with respect to that.
Go ahead,
Anything.
continue.
And then I think there was additionally a question about, an impropriety, whether it's okay for somebody to be in somebody's office. I wasn't there. I can't tell you exactly what occurred, but it's my understanding, at least what I've been told, was that Ms. Rossi was in that procurement office waiting for her turn to present. And that in and of itself does not rise to me as a violation of any law that I'm aware of. And if there's any further questions, you let me know. Thank you.
Yes.
Yes, good evening, Mayor, Vice Mayor, Commissioners, and City Manager and Attorney. My number one purpose in this city is
I
to
think we need you to identify yourself.
Bogdana Vasila, I'm the purchasing manager. First of all, my number one priority is to have integrity in the city. I like people who are smart, cooperative, and agreeable. What I do not like is when people make false accusations. So I'm going to clarify that once for all. There were presentations made in the CCC for all three vendors. All three of them, they were more than welcome to come in the purchasing office for clarification or questions. The fact that Daniel Rossi or any other person was present, it's irrelevant. May I ask the city attorney if I violated any requirement or any law regarding that presentation?
Thank you. I appreciate it. I'll go ahead and continue this. As I mentioned, within the cone of silence, there are two entities that a bidder or interested party can speak to, one being the city attorney, one being the purchasing, somebody in the purchasing office. And that is what has occurred. Mr. Soroka's account of what happened is my understanding of the situation as well. Again, we're talking about the second floor of a building called Central City Campus Building A. The upstairs consists of the conference room where the presentations took place and the purchasing office and a restroom. So if you needed to wait anywhere, the place to do it would have been the small conference room within the purchasing office and nothing more.
And if I may, Mayor, I just wanted to put one more point on the 4/5 vote and the August 1st vote that took place. After August 1st, when you made the vote on the resolution, Ms. Rossi had no right to a lease at that point. There was no binding obligation upon the city to give a lease. And in fact, those negotiations, if we weren't able to finalize them, we would have brought that back to you. Potentially, you could have told us at that point to go to the other bidder and negotiate a lease with that bidder, because ultimately we needed an ordinance approved by a 4/5 vote pursuant to our charter. So I just wanted to point that out. Thank you.
Just give me a moment here. I just want to say this. When you cast the shadow of impropriety and you're the person that's doing it, what happened to the big stink of, what happened to the lawsuits and the one lawsuit that wasn't addressed? When it was pointed out that the other applicant had just as many lawsuits, if not more, and along the same lines, that was suddenly dropped. They threw the garbage against the wall. It didn't stick. They moved on to the next thing and they don't mention it all again. Never mentioned again. Now let's move on to the next thing. When you're constantly calling up the city attorney, asking specific questions about one applicant, then you're targeting them. It's very clear that you are, because you're not asking any questions about the other ones that are involved. I hope the question was answered whether or not she was allowed in the building. I believe she was. Is that correct? As far as Ms. Rossi, city attorney?
Yes.
Okay. So she was allowed in the building. But what we were promised based on your emails and what the comments that were made that day is that you had irrefutable proof. And all we've heard, and I think what the problem was, it was hearsay, is that you saw someone walking out of a room that you didn't think they should be there. No, ma'am. No. You had your chance. You've made a wild array of accusations here and in email in previous meetings, and they all keep changing depending on the meeting. So, here's what we do know. Was the cone of silence, and can we get an explanation of what the cone of silence is and what that means, please, Mr. City Attorney?
Sure. A cone of silence is effectively what gets instituted when a competitive solicitation is issued by the city to restrict direct communications between the potential proposers for that solicitation and the individuals involved in the decision-making process, which generally includes the city commissioners, the city manager, and members of city staff who may be appointed to a committee that's going to make a recommendation to the city commission, such as an evaluation committee or a negotiation committee. And there are certain exemptions from that, for example, like giving public presentations at a public meeting.
Okay. So there was accusations made saying that the cone of silence was broken and that's why L&M was eliminated. It wasn't. Yes, there was a motion that night. We addressed it. We talked about it. There didn't receive a second. There was no action. L&M was not eliminated from consideration because of the breaking the cone of silence, which they did. And we know that because we have emails in which they did that. They sent emails multiple times to the commission, to the city attorney, in his role as an evaluation committee. That shouldn't have happened, but the commission had the right to make a decision on whether or not, can you address that? Who had the decision to decide on where the cone of silence?
Ultimately, the determination of a cone of silence violation is made by the city commission per the city code.
Yes. And quite frankly, it was also broken by the other applicant when they sent an email while we were still going through the process to the commission, which they shouldn't have done. It wasn't, Miss Rossi never did that. Her organization didn't do that, but we aired it out and we decided that was not going to be we're not going to throw them out simply because of that. We debated it at the points that were made. All of these things that have been brought up, they change depending on what day it is, what the accusations are. I am still waiting for the video proof. Where is the irrefutable proof that something was done wrong? I think that's where everybody was a little stunned. And yes, when someone's going to shout from the audience and stand up during a meeting, I'm going to ask you to stop. I'm going to ask you to leave if you're going to continue to do that. My job is to keep the meeting going. When you interrupt a commissioner who is speaking for the first time on the issue, because you don't like something that was told by somebody you met previous to the meeting and maybe you didn't get what you were promised, you don't get to stand up in the meeting and throw a fit. We have to have some sort of, control of the meeting. It's not the way this works. So, I look at all these comments and everything that's been said and it's disappointing. I think it's pretty disgusting, some of the stuff that's gone on. And if you can't understand the project that you were bidding on and you got it wrong, that's not on the city. That's on you. It's very clear in there. To try to besmirch the character of people in the community and of city employees because you can't understand certain things, that's not right, in my opinion. And I think it's right for us to stand up against that. It's not okay. You want to target people and say, I'm not petty, I'm not going to do that. But then you make comments like, I will never step foot in that place. I've heard that before. I heard that from Mr. Hurst saying he would never step place in Flanagan's because they supported me when I won my election and had my party there afterwards. This kind of pettiness exists and it shouldn't. It does cloud this and it makes a lot of people confused because you're listening to a one-sided argument by people whose story continues to change. All right. I think we got a little more clarity tonight, I hope. And I hope we can put some of this to bed, but I know my colleagues want to speak on it. Vice Mayor Parnas.
I got a phone call from Mr. Hertz. He'd like to have a meeting with me. I said, come to City Hall. He said, no, I don't want anybody to know I'm talking to you. I told him I'm having dinner at Nick's if he wants to stop by. Well, he did in a public place. He wanted to talk to me about the restaurant. I knew it was going to be on the agenda that night. So I said, I don't meet privately with people. Meet me at the restaurant. He came to the restaurant. Lo and behold, the owner of the Pier restaurant shows up. Irrefutable proof. We got eyewitnesses, none of which appeared in front of the commission that saw anything. I'm not a lawyer, but my God, I'd take myself into court against that case and I'd win it. I didn't see anything except somebody came out of an office. What crime is that? What disqualification is that? Somebody saw somebody come out of an office. I don't take private meetings from lobbyists, and you were lobbying for that lady. You should register yourself as a lobbyist. I value the sunshine laws and I follow them. That's why I met you in a public place, not in secret. I don't meet in secret with people, no matter who they are or what their intentions are, good or bad. Because anything that comes in front of this commission, I have a responsibility to have it in the open. You want to see me? You come to my office. People come to my office. The door is left open. It's never closed, no matter who it is. And I've had many people come to me and talk to me about projects, what they want, what they don't want. Can I do this? Can I not do this? Do you think it's a good idea for Deerfield? In my office with the door open, where it's public, not private. So much for sunshine laws. I obey them. Even though you wanted a private, secret meeting. No. I'm going to quote you. I don't want anybody to know I've talked to you. That's what you said to me. I'm sorry. I don't do that.
Sure, President.
Thank you, Mayor. So my question is to the city attorney. So it was presupposed tonight that the initial vote needed a 4/5 vote, and you're saying that it did not. And so the first voting that we took, which was the 3/5 vote, isn't addressed in the charter. The charter says that when you're awarding the contract, is that correct?
I just want to be clear. So what the charter says is for the award of a contract or lease, the Pier Restaurant requires affirmative 4/5 vote. The charter also requires that leases or leases in excess of 5 years requires an ordinance. So what Mr. Hers was referring to is an August 1st vote on a resolution regarding the solicitation. And my point to you was the ordinance is actually what approved the lease or contract, because up until your approval of that ordinance, Ms. Rossi had no right to the lease of that facility up until that point. Is that clear?
Yes, but I have a follow-up here.
Okay,
So
sure.
would that, in your opinion, withstand a legal challenge?
I believe it would, and I'm prepared to defend it should one get brought.
Okay. Okay, thank you.
Sure.
You know, the process of government can be at times extremely complicated, but I think that there is an obligation for people not to run to some sort of conclusion when there is nothing that points them into a direction that something has gone wrong. The implication has been that the commission, to some extent, is culpable, and this commission has done nothing wrong. I mean, there's a process, and we all may not agree at the end about any decision that made, but everybody should just know that the process is fair. Whether I was on the side where there was an award or on the side where there was not. The problem that I have is that people seeing this process, walking away, not believing in the system that they have voted. That's a problem to me. And I said it before. Ms. Freitag said that along with Mr. Hers, and I even said it at the beginning about the process should start over. I'm not so sure that that wouldn't be the best thing for the people that live in the city of Deerfield Beach who watch this process need to walk away understanding that their government is working. I will tell you, I believe that staff And I believe that those that were involved did the right thing. Now, if I can be shown something different, please let me see it. And I'll tell you one even better. You show me the smoking gun and I'll bring it forward. But if it doesn't exist, then don't create it. Don't put bullets in the ghost gun because it doesn't have any premise. The thing is now you're implicating people that have working jobs, people that have families. And it's important how their wives, their children, their husbands look at them. Do they live in a corrupt city? And it's wrong to point people out unless you're able and you're prepared to say, here is what has happened. There's been a violation and there should be action taken. But if you're going to just suggest it, well, we all can do that. And that is not the right thing. I just think that the public who watches the process needs to believe in it. When we don't believe in our city and we don't believe in our country, we don't believe in the state, then it doesn't work. It simply doesn't work. There's so much mistrust because there is a feeling that the rules have been violated and those that are in charge are unable or unwilling to do anything about it. Show me what has gone wrong, not to point a finger at someone, but to restore some measure of understanding about what we do and integrity in what we do. Absence of integrity, absence of understanding that the process is a good process and strong. What do we have? If we can't do that in the city of Deerfield Beach, what do we have as a city? And there's a kind of a failure, I think, in this whole process. And sometimes we may need to debate things a little bit longer, talk about it. You may not necessarily agree, but I don't really believe that anybody up here on this dais is a crook. And I think it's unfair to suggest that. It's not right. It's not right unless, you know, you can prove it. The people out here, just like people in the public, we have families. And just a suggestion that, you know, you might have this cloud over you, it's just not right. It's just not right. Just not right. It's not right for the city of Deerfield Beach. It's not right for the state, and it's not right for the country. Until people start to say, you know what? I didn't win that. I wasn't on the right side of that. But the process that we've all agreed that we should live by was fair. Everybody up here was elected to do the right thing, not for city government, but for you, the resident. And I can tell you, nothing matters more to me than you. People in District 1, people in District 2, 3, and 4. I'm a city commissioner, though I represent District 2, its concerns that I will always bring forward. I'm a city commissioner. I'm proud to be here. If you have a question about the integrity, ask it. Don't suggest it. Ask it. Because if you do that, I think a lot of things can get cleared up. And I will tell you, unless we all start opening our minds to this process, we could lose our city, we could lose our state, we can lose our country. It's time for us to really take control over what we say we believe in. It's important. It's very important. So, you know, nobody has called me to share with me evidence or something that would alter the process, something that I can present to the people, because I'm gonna tell you like it is. I'm not gonna know that something is wrong and then hide it. I'm not gonna do it. There's a greater good. And you know what the greater good is? The greater good is like Ms. Freitag, who was talking about, just because it's muddied. I don't like her walking out of this meeting like others, feeling that the process is muddied and we refuse to do anything about it. At the very least, let's explain it to acknowledge it. Let's get an understanding so people have confidence in what we do. It's important. It's important. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you very much, Commissioner Preston. I hope this addresses some of that. I mean, hope people can read through the smoke screen. I think people having the ability to gum up a process because they don't like the outcome. Without proof, without facts is disappointing. And I'm glad we're not gonna, roll over on that. It's real easy to be a bully online. I get accused of being a bully because I kind of run the meetings and I allow people to speak and then I speak and they don't like it. Well, someone needs to stand up to 24/7 BS that's being put out on social media. It's not right. And they put it up and then they take it down. You want to put up pictures of females that attend a meeting and say, does anybody know who this woman is? Or put up pictures of our female employees who are public employees. They're not public figures, they're public employees. If you want to post their picture, say this person and call them out by name. It's going to be at this meeting and ask them why to me, got a big taste of misogyny in that, but it's also got a heaping handful of bully. And I like to stand up to bullies. I've got my butt kicked by them a few times, so I like to stand up to them. But if you're going to run your mouth online, at least do it in here too. That way we can kind of go back and forth a little. You get your turn to speak, I get my turn to speak, but don't be a coward. If you put some stuff out there, stick to it. If you make a mistake, I appreciate the apology. No one made a change to anything as far as notifications of a meeting. We follow a simple plan. Our meetings are always notified. No one's trying to hide it. If you look at your trim notice, it tells you when the meetings are. Not a mystery, but to insinuate something, is going on. We're going to hide the fact we have a giant commission meeting tonight. It's just stupid. Sorry, it's just stupid. Way too much information out there to say it's being hidden. Come on. You guys are better than that. Thank you. I think that's all we got on that.
Okay, we are now on consent portion of tonight's agenda. Items 7 through 11 are currently on consent.
Anyone? Is there anyone from the public that would like to comment on 7, 8, 9, 10, or 11, just by a show of hands? Yeah, 7, 8, 9, 10, and 11. 7? Okay. 11, so 7, 11. Anyone online? Okay. Anyone else? Just show of hands. 7 and 11. All right. We're going to pull 7 and 11. The rest can be done as a group.
Motion to approve.
Is there, let's see. We have a motion and a second. We have roll call, please.
Commissioner Drosky,
Yes.
Commissioner Hudak,
Yes.
Commissioner Preston,
Yes.
Vice Mayor Parnas,
Yes.
Mayor Gantz.
Yes.
Item number 7 is a resolution of the City Commission of the City of Deerfield Beach, Florida, reappointing Jonathan Campbell to the Board of Trustees of the Municipal Firefighters Pension Trust Fund, providing for an effective date.
I'm going to open to the public. Any comments from the public on item number 7?
Dan Hurst, 330 Southeast 19th Avenue. I would just like to see Jonathan Campbell in action. And while the city's page now does display the information that was lacking when I commented last time about this, it still never puts when the meetings are. So on the minutes to maybe a meeting from 6 months ago, there was a small little thing on the back and it said, call this number if you want information. So I called the number and they told me that there is a meeting. The next meeting of the Board of Trustees is on September 11th, 2023 at the Doubletree Hotel at 8:30 a.m. So I'm just trying to do a public service and let everybody know that that's when the next meeting is, but there must be a way to try to get this pension trust fund to put out when their meeting is and not have where somebody has to call and try to dig, because this is, the city gives $7 million every year to the Fireman's Pension Trust Fund. It's not a little bit of money, and it would be nice to know when their meetings are so that some concerned taxpayers may be able to attend it. So while I have no problem with Jonathan Campbell being appointed, I do have a problem with the lack of meeting notices that this Board of Trustees operates under. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, I'm gonna close it to the public then.
Motion to approve.
Second.
Motion from Vice Mayor, seconded by Commissioner Preston. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed?
Item number 11 is a resolution of the City Commission of the City of Deerfield Beach, Florida, approving the issuance of a purchase order to TSC Jacobs South Inc. to furnish and supply a reverse osmosis degasifier and scrubber system in an amount not to exceed $42,655 for the city's wastewater treatment plant in accordance with section 38-1163C of the city's procurement code for sole source purchases, providing for implementation and an effective date.
Commissioner Preston?
Yes. First of all, let me just say that this is probably, will be directed to our engineer, to help me in this process, just to understand. This is not any criticism because what they do over there, it's a great job. Just, we have, as Commissioner Parnas pointed out, a meeting ago, we have the best water. And Priscilla does just a great job. She does that. So my question is, this reverse osmosis, you got to first understand what osmosis is. So I went back to science class. So help me if I'm wrong, because I want to understand the reverse process that molecules actually move. And I remember this way back from school, that molecules from one side of move through a semi-permeable membrane to the ones that are lesser move to the ones that are greater. Is that right? It equalizes.
Very high pressure system to push water through a membrane.
Okay.
And the membrane is what filters out everything you don't want in your drinking water.
Okay,
So-
is that the reverse part?
Well, the mechanics of it, I can't really describe. It's pushing it through a membrane. So it uses this high pressure pump that pushes water through a membrane. And the membrane captures all of those particles.
That's the osmosis.
Well, yes, flowing through
That's the osmosis. Yeah,
filters,
okay.
yes.
Okay.
Yeah, and this is the original equipment manufacturers, TSC Jacobs, and they won't warranty the system without the use of the filtration devices in the system.
Okay.
Okay.
Could we go on tour together through the district so that people will understand this?
Well, we love to conduct tours. Actually, my water plant manager, does a wonderful job. I've taken my children to see the plant and he's explained the process to my children. They've done, he does a wonderful job on tours. So I highly recommend anybody who's interested.
I was trying to understand the reverse part of that, but in the end, we end up with cleaner water.
Yeah, and the reverse osmosis uses a very high pressure system, a
Okay.
very powerful motor to push that water through. The nanofiltration is at it's a lower pressure system, but the reverse osmosis is at a much higher pressure.
Okay. That makes
Okay.
sense. Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Motion to approve?
Second.
Is there anyone from the public that would care to comment on this item? This is-
This is your baby.
Drink safe water. Right, because I don't know if I can ask her a question, but this is
Ask
exactly.
us your question, we'll get an answer.
Lucia Del Gino, by the way, 707 North Star Drive, but that's what we're supposed to put under our sink to give us the drinking, cooking, and refrigerator water to clean up all the bad stuff. So it is excellent. It's the top thing we can do to the water. My question is, or my problem is that after we do all this filtering, which is what we were talking about, the PFAS, those are filtered out. But and then the city, by the ordinance of the county, adds the other bad chemicals. So
After we
that's,
clean it all up, we make.
so
a
you
mess of
clean it up
yes.
and then you add the fluoride and
Awesome.
other horrible things that I'm sharing that with Mr. Bowman. That's why I keep bringing this up, because this is
No, no.
wonderful to have the osmosis, but and then we have to stop adding the poisons and the toxins. Thank you.
Thank
So-
you for clarifying that. Appreciate that. Is there anyone else from the public on this item? Yeah, I'm gonna go ahead and close it to the public.
Motion to approve?
Second.
Commissioner Preston, second by Vice Mayor Parnas. Roll call, please.
Commissioner Drosky,
Yes.
Commissioner Hudak,
Yes.
Commissioner Preston,
Yes.
Vice Mayor Parnas,
Yes.
Mayor Gantz.
Yes.
We are now at comments by administration and legal. No comments from legal tonight.
Just one for the commission tonight that This is regarding the fence at Johnny McKeithen Park. We've received our quote for a vinyl chain link fenced installation in the areas of the park to secure it back similar to how it was. That quote is $40,512. It'll take approximately 4 to 6 weeks once they receive approval, which approval going through the PO process will take about a week or two. So I'd estimate about 8 weeks. The city has already put in 78,000 into the fences that you see today. So we do not intend to take those fences down as they are decorative, but we will put the chain link fence on the inside of the fences that we have already placed.
Double fence doesn't hurt.
Okay, we are now at city commission business. There's one item number 12 is discussion regarding the appointment to the Solid Waste Disposal and Recyclable Materials Processing Authority of Broward County, Florida.
And on this item, City Commission, I wanted to put this as a discussion where we can bring it back at the next meeting or future meeting to get a resolution before you to appoint a primary and alternate for the, actually, I don't even know if we need a resolution. We can do it by motion. So you could actually even do it this evening, a primary and a secondary to be a representative on the Solid Waste Authority, the newly created Solid Waste Authority.
I'll nominate Commissioner Drosky.
I so wanted to leave the room.
I'll be the alternate.
Am I recognized, Mayor?
Yes.
I mean, I was on the solid waste working group for the city, so I'm probably the most logical choice. Not that I'm asking for anything additional to do or another board to sit on. But this is very important to the city. So if my colleagues are so inclined, I would be I'm okay with being the appointment, and we'll report back to you regularly going forward. And remember, this is for the authority going forward, where a master plan has to be, implemented. So that will be the next step. And so just something for us to monitor in the years going forward. I think there's 3 cities that did not participate actually and are not going to be on the authority: Pembroke Pines, Dania Beach, and Pompano Beach.
Yeah.
For various reasons that I don't understand, declined to participate in that process, but that's their decision. So I'm okay with it.
Well, I'd like to throw my hat in as an alternate.
Oh, yeah, me
Me
too.
Okay, so we'll need nominations. Looking for a nomination for Commissioner Drosky to be the primary.
I've nominated Commissioner Drosky as the primary.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Anyone from the public here to comment on this? Yes, ma'am. This is about who we're appointing, not the actual thing that we're debating, not the actual meat and potatoes of it.
Yeah.
Yes, in other words,
We're just
yes.
appointing.
Hold on, ma'am. Just for clarity. The only thing that we're going to talk about here is whether or not you think Todd should be the person to be representing us on there. We're not here to debate the solid waste thing. Okay? And if you have some questions, Paul, we can talk afterwards. This is the motion. You can only comment on the motion. The motion that's being made is, do you want Todd as the first person?
Paula Cook, 62 Centennial Court in Deerfield Beach. And I think Todd Drosky would be good to be the representative. This is a taxing authority that they've made. So I think you really have to watch these guys because they can tax us. So,
Thank you.
and that's that.
Thank you, Ms. Cook.
Dan, sit down.
Do you support Commissioner Drosky or not? You do? Thank you. You can come up and give your name and address for the record, please.
Daniel Shinetsky, 34 Keswick B, Deerfield Beach, 33442. I definitely support Commissioner Drotsky to be the lead delegate on this Broward Solid Waste Disposal Authority. We need a very, very strong advocate. And Commissioner Drotsky, his district abuts on the Mount Trashmore on Green Road. I mean, this is very crucial because I think Commissioner Drotsky especially with his legal expertise, will make sure that we're not kicking the can down the road. We're actually taking accountability to make sure that this works. And I think it's a very positive thing. And I feel very strongly that he'll be advocating for the city of Deerfield Beach, because the bottom line, the other interests.
Thank you.
Okay. Again, I support Commissioner.
It's about the
Drosky.
appointment. It's not about
Very in
the issue.
favor of it.
Thank you. It's hard, I know it's hard to keep that in mind or not.
Wholeheartedly support your appointment to
Just name your
Lana.
name and address for the record, sorry.
Lamana 5030 Southwest 109th Avenue, Davie, Florida 33328. Wholeheartedly support the appointment. I just want to know if you're gonna also refer to the past as to how this was done, and if we have any questions for the past as well as the future, do we come to you for everything once you get appointed?
We'll get that question answered for you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. Anyone else from the public? Close
Motion
it to
to
the public.
approve.
Okay, hold on. Can we get that question answered? Commissioner Drosky, can we call you in? All of us? Can we call you?
Yeah, absolutely.
Good.
Call me. I plan to report back regularly at
That's
these
awesome.
meetings to my colleagues. And one of the reasons I'm threw my hat into the ring on this, is because there's also an executive committee. There's the authority, but then there's the executive committee within the authority. And the top 10 cities, of which Deerfield Beach is one, would be in a running for a seat for that. So I'm hoping that being on the solid waste board is, in addition to being the current president of Broward League of Cities, gives us a leg up to getting on that executive committee.
Thank you. Okay. We have a motion and a second, I believe. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Okay. Do we need to take a vote on a second person?
Yeah, we need an alternate. We
an
should be
alternate,
appointing
okay.
an alternate. So somebody wants to make a motion.
Bill, you want it? I'll step down.
I appreciate that.
Make a motion to have our mayor as the alternate.
Second.
I worked with several mayors. We used to meet, and a couple of county commissioners. We used to meet regularly on the recycling issue when that was becoming a big problem. So pretty well versed in the issue and like to be there to support Commissioner Drosky if he can't make it. So I appreciate that. Anyone from the public have care to comment on whether or not I should be the alternate?
Motion to approve.
Oh my goodness. Okay.
Okay. Oh, my goodness.
Yes.
Patricia Link, 252 Ventnor R, Deerfield Beach. I want to just say thank you, both of you, for standing up to do this job. I applaud you. Thank you.
Thank you. I think that's a supportive one. I appreciate that.
Yeah.
Okay, motion.
You haven't spoke tonight, so that's okay. That's good. Thank you.
You got a
Anyone else in
motion
the
to
public?
approve.
Anyone online? And close it to the public.
Motion to approve.
Second.
Thank you. We have a motion to second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, thank you.
We're now at
Um,
city commission comment.
Thank you. District 4.
I do not have any comments tonight. Thank you.
Thank you. District 3.
Yes. For those of you that live in Century Village, which is in my district, insurance premiums have gone so far out of whack that my building just received an additional bill for $90,000 for this year. It's an apartment building with 80 residents. And that's besides the premium we've been paying all along. So we're having a meeting in the village on September 14th in the main clubhouse in the party room at 1 o'clock. There's an opportunity to meet a company that wishes us to have a co-op and save 40% on our premiums. It's a possibility. It's legal. Come and get the information and make up your own minds. I'm not for it or against it as a commissioner, but I am a resident and I was just assessed $1,200 to pay for the additional premium. Where's it going to end? We don't do something about it. Unfortunately, many seniors who live in the village will be forced to sell because they can't afford the assessment for insurance. So that's all I have from District 3.
Thank you. District 2.
Thank you, Mayor. I received a picture about the tires that was referenced by Ms. Gregory. And I received some comments from some other residents as well. And the question was asked, why? Why does that happen? It's because there are people out there that choose to prey on the vulnerable, the most vulnerable. And but it's not going to be tolerated, because a while back I contacted BSO about this very problem, actually in another part of the city, and they have been working on it. And all I can tell you, if you are dumping tires because you think that District 2 is a very easy place to do it, you may continue to do that, but when we catch you, it will hurt. And we're going to catch you. Eventually, we're going to get you, because we know what you're doing. And but BSO has been working with me, and we had a situation right off of Southwest First Ave over there and 14th Street. I drove right by the person as they had just dumped the tires, going to the site where one of the residents told me they're here now doing it. And I didn't realize it, but I drove right by them. So we are dealing with that. We're working on it. And, you know, I thank BSO for what they're doing in their help in this area. So we will continue to do what we need to do, and so that people are not taking advantage of the most vulnerable. And that's it for me in District 2, Mayor.
Thank you. District 1?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just one comment. Community Cares is going to be having an event at Zion Lutheran on Saturday. And it's to help the community. There'll be individuals there for our seniors, medical tests, and things just to help our community. And it's from 10 o'clock to 2 o'clock, which is at Zion Lutheran. So I encourage all, if you have an opportunity, to go ahead and take advantage of this great organization and see all of the, they have over 70 vendors that are going to be there to help our seniors and those that are on a fixed income. And those are the only comments I have.
Thank you very much. Yes, go right ahead.
I overlooked something on my list here. I want to thank staff for the great job they did at the pop-up. It's unbelievable. I'm still getting calls on that. It was a very good thing for the community, and we need to do it again and again. So thank you, staff. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you very much. Commissioner, Vice Mayor Parnas touched on something that's extremely important. And it's something that's part of the reason why I don't want to pull out too much in our reserves, because in talking with Jared Moskowitz, was it Congressman?
Yeah.
Jared Moskowitz, thank you. He's had so many hats in the city from when he used to represent us. But one of the things he said is that the insurance crisis is a can that can't be kicked down the road. And it is a ticking time bomb that's going to be an absolute disaster for us. We had a roundtable with a bunch of mayors, and one of the things we talked about was talking to Mayor Hardin over in Pompano, who I'm close with. He said he had a condo over by the beach, about 19 units. Their insurance went from about $350,000 for the year to $900,000. There's only 19 units. So how do you assess 19 units to make up for that? This is going to continue to happen. This is going to be a huge problem for every city, for everywhere in the state of Florida. When you've got insurance companies leaving without penalty, it's a huge problem. And I fear for us in the upcoming years about what's going to happen. So I appreciate you bringing that up. It's a very true issue. And unfortunately, there doesn't seem to be a lot of work being done on trying to fix it. And that's a shame. And I don't think there's a clear-cut, easy solution. But I think Tallahassee needs to really work on that for us. For those of you who came out tonight, there's some new faces here tonight. Thank you for coming out. It makes it much easier to debate an issue when people know the facts and they can see through the BS. I appreciate that. learn your facts. If you disagree with a position, that's a lot easier to talk because we're talking facts. We have difference of opinions. That's not a problem. But when you hear and read stuff that's simply not true or one-sided or conveniently and purposely, in my opinion, leaves things omitted, it's wrong. I appreciate you taking the time to come out. We might not always agree on things. And I joke around about, are we really going to debate whether or not Todd should be appointed? But I tease you, but thank you for coming out. I do appreciate that. It's important to us. It makes our jobs easier, and we work for you guys to do that. So thank you for that. But this is a business meeting. So this isn't a big, huge debate back and forth. This is a business meeting. We go out of our way, and a lot of cities don't give as much time possible for people to speak out publicly on issues that could be no matter what it is. But it's pretty easy to get a hold of us. My phone number is on the city website, cell phone number. Call me. If you have a question, concern, don't agree with something we voted on, give me a call. But if you're going to believe BS online, oh boy, come on. Better than that. You're stuck believing my BS, but problem is with my BS, it's real easy to figure out whether I'm lying or not because it's all public record. Everything got to go through. There is a senior discount that we give for there's a tax break that we give seniors. That's $25,000 for the city of Deerfield Beach, correct? It was pointed out, and I will give credit to at least somebody who read it online that did see this, that we have the ability in our city to expand that. It doesn't touch a lot of people. It's a very, very small amount of people to do it, but it is something we can apply for. It won't apply this year, but it can apply next year. But I think we have to make a motion to be able to do that. So maybe next meeting, or we talk about it or get some more information for the commission to do an additional 25,000. I think it is. Is that correct?
There are two exemptions, Mayor. One is an additional, we do 25 now. You could do an additional 25 for a total of $50,000 additional senior exemption. There's also an additional exemption that the commission could put in place, which is the long-term residency exemption. Very few seniors will actually qualify for that. But for those that are available, that would become available to them. So that's an additional exemption that they could get. Long-term, I believe, I believe it's 25, and the value of their home has to be less than a certain amount. 250 sounds right to me too.
We can get some more information to people, but it's something that we can explore, maybe bring it up for a future commission meeting to consider.
Sure, absolutely.
As I said, I don't want to debate it tonight, but it's something we can look into. BSO, please continue to work with us on what is going on out on the roadways. The speeding is out of control yet still. And so I think it might be time to do some more aggressive details to try to curb that. Okay. I think that's all I have. All right.
Motion to adjourn.
Motion to
Second.
adjourn. Second. All in favor say aye. Aye. Those opposed?